When he lived entirely alone in a dark world, nobody ever cared. Abandoned by his family at birth, no friends, absolutely no one. Relatives ignored him, strangers treated him like a wild, worthless animal. He hated this world, truly despised it, hostile, scary, aggressive. His life just fights, a non-stop cycle of brutal conflicts. He spent every single day desperately clawing for his own survival. Surrounded by hatred and isolation, he could only trust himself. Surviving entirely on his own, owed nothing, expected absolutely nothing. Then boom, out of nowhere, the world turned into a game. Portals ripped open in the city streets, thousands of monsters escaped. Goblins, beasts, and undead hordes began tearing through entire civilizations. They slaughtered humans, destroyed everything, every single piece of joy. But then divine beings known as the Shining Ones descended. They gifted godlike powers to a select group of chosen humans. These people became players, built to clear dungeons and slay monsters. Humanity desperately believed these superpowered players would save the world. Instead, they exploited the chaos to chase their own selfish goals. It felt like the end. Honestly, you can see why everyone lost hope. But through all this madness, our protagonist still kept his guard up. He refused to trust a single living soul until he met Lee Sejun. As one of the original 7 players, he was the strongest warrior alive. He protected the weak, slaughtered monsters, and became a true hero. This legendary fighter was genuinely willing to lay down his own life for the world. Like King Arthur pulling the sword from the stone, he crushed his enemies. Lee Sejun was determined to slay the final boss and win the game. Ending this deadly nightmare once and for all was the ultimate way he planned to save humanity. To help him, the Messiah Guild was formed of brave, heroic souls. Loyal warriors gathered around Lee Sejun, ready to fight by his side. Together, they purged the monsters, and for once, Kim Woo-jin felt true trust. He finally had a family to fight alongside against the monster hordes. They fought for a peaceful future where everyone could live in happiness. Beyond the bloody battlefields, they also shared rare moments of pure laughter. They rested bonded and carefully plotted their next big dungeon raids. Cold winter nights were spent warming themselves by the cozy campfires. With comrades like this, changing the world actually felt completely possible. Eventually, they finally stood before the absolute final chapter of their quest. The final gates were about to open, and victory was within their grasp. And then the ultimate betrayal, Lee Sejun, his trusted leader, turned on him. He viciously drove a blade deep right into the young man's stomach. Kim Woo-jin stared in absolute disbelief, clutching the cold hilt in agony. Holding back a desperate scream, agony, pure, unbearable agony. Park Shin-hye slowly approached him, explaining that once the game was cleared, everything they gained would vanish, powers, epic items, and dungeons. The world would simply stop worshipping them as godlike figures. She coldly admitted that without dungeons, they could never rule the world. All this time he had helped the villains. Woo-jin was completely devastated. After all, his own blood and fighting skills had put these monsters in power. Even worse, the knife Seong had just plunged into him was deeply poisoned. It carried Bowman's curse, and Shin-hye admitted everyone else was dead. Woo-jin was horrified. He had honestly believed they were saving the world. Instead, his comrades, the people he risked his life with, were just pawns. They were mere disposable tools, meant to be thrown away when no longer needed. The traitors claimed they had every right to rule this world as they pleased. With all their competitors wiped out, nothing stood in their way anymore. They walked away, leaving Woo-jin to bleed out from the deadly poison. He realized he could never trust anyone again, but death was already here. Then came a strange, blinding light. Suddenly, a truck roared out of a tunnel. Green trees lined the road. It was summer, warm, vibrant, and full of life. He was sitting in the passenger seat, surrounded by talking men. What was this? Where was he? He clutched his stomach, expecting to feel a gaping wound. But his skin was completely intact. Was that horrific betrayal just a bad dream? Before he could think, the driver slammed the brakes, sending the truck skidding. Right ahead of them, a familiar nightmare was tearing through the city. Massive, hideous goblins were rampaging, smashing everything to pieces. Buildings burned, cars exploded, and armed men jumped out of the truck. They hit the pavement, weapons ready to face the monsters head-on. Spotting their new targets, the beasts roared and charged straight at them. Their jaws hung open, showing razor-sharp fangs as their eyes glowed with malice. "Watch your ammo," one of the men yelled. "Make every single shot count." But suddenly, the deafening rattle of automatic gunfire drew everyone's attention. Goblins screamed as they fell, and there stood Kim Woo-jin, holding an assault rifle. He looked completely ready to tear apart any beast that got close. The monsters charged him, shattering the concrete with their massive clubs. Woo-jin leaped back with ease, unloading his weapon at point-blank range. Within minutes, the relentless gunfire stopped. Not a single monster was left standing. Their bloody corpses littered the street among the smoking ruins of destroyed cars. The soldiers stared in absolute disbelief. How did one guy pull this off? How could one guy take out an entire pack of goblins all by himself? Woo-jin had barely processed his sudden awakening before plunging into this brutal fight. But instead of thanking him, the men began shouting insults at him. They called him a reckless idiot. That was when the truth finally hit him. This was no dream. He had actually regressed to the very beginning. And once again, he was completely on his own in a merciless world. His betrayers, Lee Se-young and Park Shin-hye, were now his targets for life. Right then, a glowing system notification popped up. He had awakened as a player. Just like in his past life, the system offered him various paths to choose. But this time he noticed a hidden option, a path of pure darkness. He could become the envoy of the dark world, unlocking terrifying new abilities. This class allowed him to manipulate deadly curses and command the dead. Using dead monsters as material, he could build his own dark army. Unlike normal classes, this was broken, a complete cheat. He could monopolize all skills. Johann Jorg, king of the undead, was the absolute strongest. He received the ultimate favor of the dark world. And all its deadly abilities, if Lee Se-jun was the savior then. Johann Jorg was the monster. Woo-jin wanted to study his dark aura and become a monster himself. Meanwhile, other players were uniting in powerful guilds to acquire money and influence by any means necessary. One major organization, the Phoenix Guild, became the second strongest in Korea. Their modern, high-rise headquarters stood tall in the city's surviving center. To gain entry, rookies had to sign a strict contract, but dungeon runs came with massive hidden costs. Woo-jin knew this was not enough to purchase essential items, but he had no other option. He needed to join Phoenix and level up fast. After signing, the manager laid out rare, dark world skill pages for him. He suggested choosing just one and tearing the paper card in half. If his level matched, the manager would know instantly. Woo-jin selected a powerful skill called hematoxin blood poisoning, quite a rare find. He never expected to acquire this here. This deadly skill converted his own blood into a lethal toxin that was near impossible to resist. It was basic, but pairing it with a summonable blood golem created an insane, overpowered combination. Once he tore the page with the dark skill, a bizarre reaction occurred. The entire room lit up with a glowing violet light. The manager read his stats in complete disbelief. Suddenly, the scene shifts. Woo-jin stood alone in the dark forest. Keeping his distance, a female teammate wondered why he was ignoring everyone so coldly. He seemed to have a rather difficult, prickly attitude. A bald, heavy-set hunter warned her that she would soon see just how toxic his character really was. She barely knew him. Then Woo-jin warned them to prepare for battle. They were coming. But it was only a dream. Our hero had died and been revived in the game, yet he still dreamt of his past life constantly. In this new past, he knew his former comrades were still alive. How long until they met again? Meanwhile, Gwangmyeong Sports Park was heavily fortified by armed soldiers and equipped with state-of-the-art tech. The hunters had already assembled in the lot, preparing for their first raid. Extremely anxious, they arrived early. Jusiop, an experienced hunter on his fourth raid, bragged that they should just trust his lead. Only one last teammate was missing. Soon, a loud rumble shook the area as a beat-up, cheap, rusty car pulled into the lot. A rugged, unfamiliar man stepped out. He was clearly an experienced veteran, but undisciplined. As they walked to the gate, the group kept complaining about his tardiness. One arrogant player boastfully showed off his new weapon, claiming they could easily clear the zone without the latecomer. After all, a slacker would only hold them back. They received a quick dungeon briefing. The objective was to clear a goblin cave and survive. Destroy all monsters. The primary goals and clearing conditions were finally announced. The manager gave the doubtful players one final chance to back out and check their gear. To Jen, these teammates were complete strangers. This was perfect since he had absolutely no intention of looking out for anyone. Then the portal flared to life, letting the players step directly into the dungeon. With the game officially underway, everyone stepped through and immediately received their equipment. All the gear and weapons they bought beforehand materialized right in their hands. They looked quite bizarre, gripping heavy crossbows, specialized arrows, and sharp hunting knives. This game was getting wild. The next second, their entire environment shifted. They materialized inside a massive forest under the canopy of towering ancient trees. It was a beautiful, clear day, and Jin immediately headed off to scout. Deep claw marks on the bark warned him that a horde of goblins was nearby. Soap ordered Jin to scout ahead while he stayed back to establish a base camp. The young hunter agreed without a single complaint, slipping silently into the woods. His compliance stunned the others, who quickly labeled him as incredibly naive. They figured he had absolutely no idea how suicidal it was to wander off alone. Dismissing him as a total fool, the squad focused on preparing their own hunt. But Jin saw right through them. They wanted to use him as bait. Honestly, that is even better, and trust me, they are in for a massive surprise. That allowed him to farm fresh weapons. Meanwhile, the guild headquarters stayed awake all night. A highly classified meeting was underway, with elite members gathered around a grand table. Their faces remained shrouded in the shadows as they prepared to meet a new recruit. Yang Jiu, one of the veterans, already despised the newcomer's arrogant attitude. Just then, Suzuki stepped out of the darkness and formally introduced himself. His reputation preceded him, as several high-ranking members already recognized his face. Lisa Jung welcomed him, though a top archer openly questioned his presence. A massive brute suddenly lost his temper and lunged straight at the arrogant recruit. The room erupted into total chaos as members started bickering and trading blows. Just as the physical fighting escalated, a booming voice ordered everyone to quiet down. The commanding shout worked instantly. Every single member returned to their designated seats. Pak Shinhai cut through the chatter, suggesting they skip the pleasantries and start business. She wanted a clear update on when the agreed-upon project would finally be finished. If the only remaining obstacle was gathering raw materials, they needed a realistic timeline. They estimated it would take 3 more days, which pleased everyone in attendance. Meanwhile, back in the game, the intense hunt for goblins was still underway. The surrounding woods were eerily quiet, but that silence was nothing more than a trap. Leaping across branches, Jin inspected the massive claw marks and realized the rumors were true. The sheer scale of the slashes offered valuable clues on how to survive this place. Even the most overpowered beasts always possess a fatal flaw if you look closely enough. Suzuki had taught him that valuable lesson back during their very first training session. Though Jin once took it lightly, he now knew Suzuki was just a cold-blooded killer. He was just a loyal attack dog for the fake savior. Now it was payback. Suddenly, a massive boulder smashed into a nearby trunk, barely missing Jin's head. Spinning around, he locked eyes with 3 sneaky goblins ready to tear him apart. Time to go to work. He opened his interface, picking a weapon. Just recently, he had been hiding from goblins in deep 7-story dungeons. Now, they were just targets for his deadly hematotoxin. Slicing his own palm, he let the blood flow. It was pure poison. He waited silently for the approaching monsters. The exact moment he drove his blade into a goblin, the creature dropped dead, instant kill. The poison worked beautifully. He swiftly dealt with the next monster too, but noticed that even though the goblins were poisoned, they kept coming. The poison was not quite strong enough yet. Just then, a goblin suddenly slammed a club into Eugene, knocking him aside. He realized that a simple knife was not the best weapon here, so in the next clash he flung it directly at the goblin's head. They were incredibly dumb and quite predictable, making them easy targets. He figured that if he dragged out the fight, the monsters would gather together, allowing him to wipe them out in large bunches. He pulled a powerful whip from his inventory, ready to face the horde. The sight of the legendary Goblin King's whip struck pure terror into the beasts. They scattered in panic. Meanwhile, the rest of the players pressed forward through the area. For a while, everything remained completely quiet. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A pack of goblins, absolutely terrified of some unseen force, burst from the trees and charged blindly ahead without even looking. They ran straight into the players. Soap slashed a goblin down, looking like an absolute hero to the rest of the group, by standing his ground and protecting the others. The grateful players showered him with endless praise for his bravery. Grilla was quite glad he had brought a longsword along. After all, goblins were nothing but easy, brainless bags of meat. Everything went smoothly until his blade got firmly stuck inside a dead goblin's body, while the player frantically struggled to free his weapon. Another monster struck him down. The rest of the team backed away in sheer horror as their champion fell. While the hideous beasts kept closing in, Soap quickly lost all his confidence. He started screaming to his allies for help. The three newbies stood frozen in fear, watching their teammate get slaughtered, when suddenly blinding bolt of lightning ripped through the monster's flesh. A perfectly calm Eugene stepped into view. Cracking his whip, he lashed at the monsters while keeping a perfectly safe distance. Bit by bit, he cleared out the entire horde. Level up, he unlocked a highly eye-catching achievement. These goblins were honestly much weaker than he had anticipated. Still, such a massive pile of bodies would definitely turn some heads. Only fools swing heavy swords when the Goblin King's whip gets the job done, he thought. Eugene knew that there was absolutely nothing left for him in this zone. He would not gain any more points. And his traumatized party members were slowly recovering from their near-death experience. They had not seen their fifth teammate anywhere, assuming he must have already died since. There was absolutely no sign of him. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from the forest. The players instantly froze, cutting their arguments short as they braced for a new fight. Right then, a system alert popped up. A player had unlocked the skeleton warrior skill. Eugene immediately checked the details, completely stunned. He could not believe that this incredible power was actually his. He knew that John George, the legendary immortal, the undead king, commanded an army of the dead with this exact skill. Yet he remembered its fatal flaw. This power was highly imperfect. And that exact flaw let Jin kill Georg before. The rule, only monsters slain by Jin himself could be sacrificed. There were plenty of other restrictions as well, but these shortcomings did not matter if a hunter knew how to plan each move carefully. At the very least, Jin had already saved plenty of time by securing this skill. Now, it would be much easier to distract enemies while hunting. Activating the ability, the young man walked over to one of the dead goblins and held his hand over it. Gradually, dark energy began to flow directly into his palm as the goblin's corpse withered, losing its entire essence, until only a bare skeleton remained. Soon it stirred. It stood before its master, ready to serve. Two empty eye sockets stared back with mindless, fanatical devotion. Jin began to train the summon. At first, its movements were incredibly clumsy, lacking both strength and coordination. Relying on this skeleton was not going to be easy. Skeleton as a main weapon would take serious effort. Pondering this, the young hunter pushed deeper into the forest until he stumbled upon a steep cliff. Down below lay dozens, if not hundreds, of dead warrior corpses. It was incredibly obvious that bloodthirsty monsters lived nearby, slaughtering anyone who dared to walk this path. And Jin knew he had absolutely no reason to show mercy to such creatures. Meanwhile, the surviving team members gathered around their campfire, tense as they discussed the brutal events of the day. They never expected the goblins to be this deadly, leaving them completely clueless on how to survive. They had obviously grossly underestimated this dungeon, but nobody wanted to die. Soap tried to cheer them up, insisting they could survive if they pulled themselves together. Suddenly, a heavy rumble shook the cavern floor. Terrified party members stared into the darkness, completely unable to believe their eyes. Wait, what? A level-up message suddenly flashed above them, which was incredibly strange because this made absolutely no sense. They were just shivering by the campfire. But level-ups only happen when someone is fighting, meaning that useless rookie was still out there, alive and fighting. From experience, Jin knew the absolute best way to clear out a massive horde of goblins was a sweeping, coordinated strike. He blocked the cave entrance with brushwood, then brought his torch close. The bonfire exploded into life. It lit up the entire night sky. Jin and his skeleton watched the raging blaze with cold, quiet satisfaction. Inside the cave, the goblins caught the scent of heavy smoke, which quickly choked the caverns. The monsters began to suffocate as the oxygen dwindled, causing them to collapse. They were too foolish to realize their only escape was straight through the flames. Some of the panicked beasts burned alive while trying to push their way out. Suddenly, a massive tremor shook the cave as a monstrous goblin emerged from the shadows. This boss was on an entirely different level than the rest. With flaming eyes, a massive muscular frame, and sharp fangs, he was terrifying. Before the Messiah Guild finally cleared this place, countless rookies had lost their lives to this beast. However, Jin had no intention of letting this creature run rampant or slaughter anyone ever again. Among these novice players, the skeleton wants to fight the goblin boss alone, and Wu Jin decides not to interfere, even knowing it might get smashed to pieces. The skeleton grabs a sword and charges straight at the boss. At first it looks totally comical, until the clever summon slips right between the giant monster's legs and cuts its tendons, blazing fast. Blood sprays everywhere, staining the ground. Wu Jin immediately remembers a past battle against a terrifying, legendary lizard boss, an unbeatable fire-breathing giant. Back then, in that critical moment, Wu Jin suggested tripping the beast to create an opening for an easy victory. He had sliced its heels, and now his summoned skeleton does the exact same thing. The goblin screeches in agony and drops to its knees, letting Wu Jin drive his blade deep into the beast's chest. Beside him, his skeleton does the same, stabbing its sword right next to his, mimicking him perfectly. He realizes his summon is copying his moves. Since he can master almost any weapon, he knows that this loyal undead soldier will soon grow into an incredibly powerful and reliable partner in battle. Suddenly, a high-ranking observer watching his fight sends him a message containing a rare skill book. This is huge, and Wu Jin looks at these legendary abilities with absolute satisfaction. Talk about an unexpected bonus. The goblin boss is dead. The dungeon is completely cleared, ending the raid. As the exit portal hums to life, the surviving players prepare to leave. It is crazy to think they conquered this whole dungeon in just one day. Outside, the organizer eagerly welcomes the returning team, but notices that Kim Wu Jin is missing. The other survivors claim he went off alone on a reconnaissance mission and never came back, leaving everyone feeling incredibly devastated. But just as they lose hope, the gateway suddenly flares up again, capturing everyone's attention. Stepping out of the light is Kim Wu Jin, completely alive and unscratched. The manager sprints over, while the other players start whispering among themselves, convinced he must have used some underhanded tricks to steal their achievements. As the manager bombards Wu Jin with questions, the crowd gets even more hostile and skeptical of his real power. Wu Jin remains quiet, letting his actions do the talking. Meanwhile, the news is flooded with demands to regulate these elite players and tax their massive incomes. Worldwide, the sheer greed of hunters is growing wildly. Since only hunters can clear these dungeons, they basically hold the world hostage. But right on cue, the famous Messiah Guild makes their next move, effortlessly conquering a dangerous 5-story dungeon. Their leader, Lee Si-jun, is praised as a savior yet again. This massive victory sends their sponsors' stock prices skyrocketing. The media only cares about the Messiah Guild, painting every other hunter as a useless amateur. Back on the street, people are demanding answers about Wu Jin's goblin raid, blaming the newbie for almost getting everyone killed. The rumors say he was so blinded by loot that he brainlessly charged into a horde, forcing Soap to risk his life to save him. Talk about a selfish player who does not care about his teammates. But in reality, Kim Wu Jin is playing a much deeper game. He needs to amass power quickly to get the attention of elite power players, knowing he cannot simply walk up to Lee Si-jun like in his past life. To destroy his ultimate enemy, Wu Jin needs secrets. Every single detail about his life, starting with the most deeply forgotten memories. Wu Jin gets dragged into the office, facing a harsh reprimand for dealing with the goblin dungeon all on his own. He shrugs it off, claiming that he only needed quick cash and wanted more work, claiming all those wild rumors were nothing but pure jealousy. The guild managers admit the gossip might be total nonsense. Still, they refuse to let Wu Jin run completely wild. Now his next assignment leads straight to a brutal goblin dungeon where Changyang's elite team recently perished. Since that disaster, nobody has dared to go back. Changyang himself was a rising star within the guild, yet even he lacked the raw power to clear that deadly dungeon. Wu Jin's request makes the managers highly uneasy, simply because he wants to enter a death trap where top-tier specialists already failed. It looks like this rookie will not survive for very long, but the bosses choose to fund him anyway. Wu Jin knows that to bring down a hero, he must first align with the ultimate villain. Late at night, the young man arrives entirely alone at the base to enter the dungeon. His supervisor assumes the worst. Greed is his only motivator. For money, he walks him all the way to the portal's edge, silently hoping that the kid will change his mind at the very last second, but the portal shimmers open and Woo-jin steps inside. Checking his status screen, he quickly realizes that clearing this brutal dungeon completely on his own is basically suicide at his current level, but if he can raise a massive orc skeleton warrior, the scales will tip completely. With this plan locked in, Woo-jin waits quietly. Soon, a nearby goblin locks its eyes onto him. The clash begins. Woo-jin swiftly slides right between the towering monster's legs and slashes hard at its ankles with his blade, trying to bring the giant down so he can finish it off, but there is a problem. The beast's hide is too thick and Woo-jin's strike leaves nothing but a tiny scratch. This goblin is monstrously strong, and Woo-jin can barely deflect its brute force. Still, he knows that to summon his first undead servant, he absolutely must kill this beast. The monster doesn't pause for a single second, hurling massive boulders at his head. Woo-jin dodges behind the target and slashes at blinding speed. The monster cannot keep up with the blinding pain. Seeing dark blood spray from the gashes, Woo-jin smiles as his strategy finally pays off. The crippled giant is no longer a threat. Woo-jin's sharp blade sinks smoothly deep into the monster's chest. Meanwhile, the very next morning, the entire city is buzzing with rumors about a mysterious, unranked hunter. Sejun sits down with a colleague who is completely glued to a secret file, totally ignoring him. Sejun loses his patience completely. He demands to see those secret papers and stares in disbelief. The documents reveal a detailed profile of a complete unknown rookie who just awakened and instantly solo cleared a high-difficulty dungeon. Even wilder rumors claim he already went into a second gateway entirely alone. This guy is way too cocky for a freshman. Sejun simply refuses to believe it. Even he struggled hard when starting out, so this file must be total garbage. Right then, Secretary Lee steps inside, the brilliant mind who carefully wrote this entire report on this mysterious player. Sejun still doubts all these shocking details. Yet he cannot question Secretary Lee's pristine tracking. She is someone who always delivers flawless results. Soon, the discussion shifts to purchasing a brand new gate. Secretary Lee notes that the market prices for premium dungeons are currently too. Her search goes on, but Henim warns there just aren't enough dungeons. If Sejun starts sweeping them, this makes Sejun pretty indignant, claiming he deserves a total break. After all, he literally just got back yesterday. But Henim is convinced that resting too much will only make him lazy. That is why you have to keep clearing dungeons and making more money. Meanwhile, an orc is fighting desperately for his life inside the dungeon, facing off against a skeleton warrior that nearly crushed him with its club. Woo-jin realizes that his low-level fortitude skill is actually pretty weak, but his instincts from past battles tell him a different story. He has to absorb energy and raise another skeleton warrior, placing his hand on the corpse of a dead goblin. The surrounding monsters watch the eerie glow around him in absolute horror. Dreading the consequences, Woo-jin triggers a brand new skeleton warrior right from the goblin's cold corpse. This summoned soldier is massive, its glowing eyes locking onto the terrified prey. As long as Woo-jin's mana holds out, he can raise an army of skeleton warriors from the fallen. Every single dead monster becomes another loyal servant for the player. Named Kim Woo-jin, once the goblins are completely wiped out, the hunter levels up, gains skill points, and upgrades his blood poisoning skill. But honestly, grinding levels in this dungeon is getting pretty slow. It's time to skip the trash mobs and hunt down the actual boss. At first, Woo-jin thought the boss led a pack, but it turns out he runs solo. Keeping his distance from the other monsters, there is only one spot left where this deadly hunter could be hiding. Right then, he notices his skeletons. The skeleton's odd curiosity, strange, yes, but he quickly shrugs it off. The master plan is what matters. If he confronts the boss, there won't be any minor mobs around to kill and turn into new undead allies. That means fighting with just a single skeleton, so he needs a smarter setup. He needs a much better plan. Right on cue, monsters show up. Their intentions are a mystery, but they leave a very convenient trail of blood. Following the crimson path, Woo-jin closely tracks one of the foul beasts and finds it devouring its own kind. He knows this dungeon boss is on a completely different level, so rushing in head first without a plan is pure suicide. Instead, he preps his gear, coating a sharp arrow with his toxic blood. Next, he sends his skeleton warrior forward to draw the monster's attention. The beast drops its meal, grabs a massive club, and charges with pure rage. The A brutal clash erupts between his skeleton and the massive orc hunter. Right away, it is obvious, the skeleton is completely outmatched. Wujin realizes he has exactly one shot to take this monster down. He needs to bypass that thick, armored skin and strike its sole vulnerable point. Taking a deep breath, he lines up his shot, knowing patience is everything. Direct hit, the arrow strikes right into the center of the goblin's eye. The strike hits a critical spot, allowing the blood poison to spread instantly. The lethal toxin rapidly floods its system, leaving the beast completely weakened. Seizing the moment, the skeleton warrior drives its blade deep into the boss. Target down, the dangerous and bloodthirsty boss hunt is finally complete. He cleared it finally, the entire dungeon was conquered and his level rose. Now Kim Woo-jin began searching. He examined the dead beast's massive lair. It devoured everything, absolutely everything in its path, leaving only piles of bones. Among the scattered skeletons, one specific heap caught the young hunter's eye. This wasn't an orc's doing, no way, the fatal wound was highly suspicious. The victim was blindsided from behind, it was done by a professional killer. Someone used to executing players in dungeons. Was it a planned murder? Or just an accident, if the deceased belonged to Park Young-wan's squad? Within the elite Phoenix Guild, he was likely betrayed by his own ally. Kim Woo-jin wanted answers. He immediately began searching the dark cavern for clues. Suddenly he spotted it, a tiny, incredibly narrow crevice hidden in the wall. Only a single human could squeeze inside. No goblin could fit, not here. Our hunter cautiously crawled through the tight gap, pressing deeper into the dark. There he discovered a perfectly preserved skeleton in full armor, sword in hand. His blade was spotless, untouched. He had clearly fled the battle while others fought cowering in this hole until his slow, inevitable death in the dark. A Phoenix Guild medallion hung from his chest. Finding his identity was easy. Jung Yonggi, he was a rising star under the corrupt Master Park Young-wan. Right near his feet, another small object caught Kim Woo-jin's sudden attention. It was a pocket diary. Kim Woo-jin picked it up with zero expectations. But pleasant surprises do happen. He opened the pages and immediately froze. This wasn't a diary, it was Park Young-wan's personal blacklist, ultimate jackpot. Knowing its incredible worth, he pocketed the journal with a cold, knowing smile. Right then, a glowing system prompt flashed directly in front of his eyes. He unlocked a brand new legendary skill. The coveted eyes of Anubis was his. It allowed him to witness the final moments of any dead corpse, unreal. No matter his past struggles, Kim Woo-jin's luck was officially on the rise. They say the dead can't speak, true, but only until you use this power. He stepped closer, placed his hands over the hollow eyes, and stood perfectly still. Activating the eyes of Anubis, he looked directly at the dead man's skull. Instantly, their consciousness linked. The final memories of Jung Yonggi flashed before him. He saw his dying comrades screaming, "Trust me, it gets way worse from here." Then he watched a traitor systematically slaughtering his own wounded allies with a sword. It was the vile man who would soon run the entire Phoenix Guild. None other than Park Young-wan himself. Kim Woo-jin finally let go, breathing heavily. He had witnessed enough. He completely understood the dark betrayal that happened here. The intense vision heavily drained his mana, but his preparation was now officially complete. Armed with this crucial information and the blacklist, his enemy's fate was sealed. He could easily get close to his targets, no matter how paranoid they were. Meanwhile, back in the city, ruthless corporate power struggles had turned incredibly violent. The executives simply couldn't let some rogue hunter conquer their high-value dungeons. The critical gate that their top manager had failed to secure was cleared by some mysterious newcomer. Naturally, Secretary Kim also fell victim to their rage. The disgraced manager was roughly dragged out of the office by armed guards. The furious guild boss sat alone, scanning a fresh newspaper headline about the clear. He was a rookie who cleared the entire dungeon alone. Everyone knew it. This new guy already had a terrible reputation. Just the day before, inside the first dungeon, he abandoned his team completely, and rumors claimed he took every single reward for himself. No one knew if it was true. But with a garbage reputation, you will not get far, not a chance. Suddenly, Secretary Kim reported that Kim Woo-jin was asking to see the boss. He walked right into the lion's den, alone. This shocked everyone. Meanwhile, complete chaos broke out in a different office. The results of the dungeon applications were ready, with 20 spots given to the Phoenix Guild. 3 other greedy guilds were aggressively fighting over the remaining 20 spots. Even with an equal split, 2 dungeons remained empty, quietly waiting. And that was the massive problem. Nobody wanted to find a compromise. Since these were a plus-ranked dungeons, the chance for rare loot was massive. They offered incredible efficiency, pure profit, so nobody wanted to yield. Every guild was overflowing with pride. Deciding who got them was impossible. Staff wished someone would just apply for those last 2 vacant spots. A perfect solution, because in these dungeons, literally anything could happen. Right then, a sudden, urgent phone call came in from Park Yunwan. Word spread that Kim Woo-jin, acting as a lone wolf, wanted to take those 2 remaining spots without letting the other factions know. If the rumors held up, this guy always moved completely alone anyway. The other groups would not care, but wait, was he actually working with Park Yunwan, or was he just a tool to be discarded later? Park Yunwan planned to feed one of those dungeons to the factions, playing the role of a peacemaker who was actually fooling whom here. It was hard to tell, but sometimes taking a step back brings bigger gains. Still, the exact deal between Park Yunwan and Kim Woo-jin remained a mystery. Inside the office, Secretary Kim asked her boss why he accepted the application. It turned out the kid had brought a guild token inside a blacklisted diary. There were barely any good people left in the world, these days anyway. The boss planned to use Kim Woo-jin, then throw him away immediately. He would dispose of him, fast, the second he outlived his usefulness. During their meeting, Kim Woo-jin handed over the diary, which highly annoyed Park Yunwan. The boss assumed the kid was trying to blackmail him, but he was dead wrong. Instead, the young man offered a deal. He wanted a single-story, a ranked dungeon. The request made Park Yunwan laugh out loud, but the kid stood firm. He knew the Phoenix and Messiah guilds were currently fighting over it. With limited spots, the move seemed suicidal, but get this, he did not care. He knew the danger but still demanded to go. The boss accepted under conditions. Meanwhile, a lecture was taking place for the students at Kyumbo University. The hall was completely packed. Kim Woo-jin sat silently in the back. The professor discussed a report on a dungeon holding at least 1,000 orcs. Inside lay a massive colony of dangerous, A+ rank orc warriors. According to statistics, only 70 people had survived previous raids. Nearly half of them died, leaving only the top elites from each guild. Everyone gathered in the hall, whispering rumors that some deaths were not caused by monsters, but there was zero proof. It was highly likely that the killings actually happened among the players themselves, a perfect chance to eliminate rivals and steal their trophies. Inside this brutal dungeon, the prize for slaying an orc warrior was a single orc fang. In the end, that reward went to the Messiah Guild because of their massive contribution, of course. Nothing could be officially proven, but now everything felt incredibly suspicious, even if Seun was behind the incident. The Messiah Guild might still be completely innocent. Maybe they had just quietly planted their own spies inside rival factions. Looking at how things usually went, that seemed like the most logical prediction. Soon, a massive portal flickered open as groups of players stood waiting. They stepped through the gate together, representing the strongest forces in the area. Major groups like the Messiah Guild, Phoenix Guild, Lion Guild, and Skull Guild were all here, but Kim Woo-jin entered entirely alone, planning to hunt down those orc fangs right away. However, having so many players created total chaos. Different guilds struggled to locate their own members in the crowd. Suddenly, the Messiah Guild announced they had already formed up and were ready. They marched straight into the danger zone to hunt down orcs for points. Their coordination was flawless as they lined up, showing exactly why they earned so much praise, but being first to move didn't guarantee victory. They were moving fast, but out here, a quick start means absolutely nothing. Thousands of deadly orcs were waiting. Suddenly, one of the beasts appeared right in front of the front line. It was a massive creature with burning eyes and long, sharp fangs. An armored tank of a player stepped forward, shield raised, ready to defeat the monster and claim the first kill of the day. The clash began instantly. The giant beast was taller and far stronger than him. Its massive fist slammed directly against his heavy shield, but he held his ground. Right then, a girl behind him activated her hypnotic restraint ability, targeting the creature directly. With the monster temporarily frozen, the team kept the pressure on. To help their tank take down the beast safely, everything seemed under control. She maintained the spell, keeping the creature paralyzed while the shield fighter attacked. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to violently shake. It felt like a massive earthquake was about to hit. Everyone turned. To find the source, something massive was happening just beyond the trees. The players stared into the dark forest, completely distracted by the rumble. And then the woods erupted as waves of crazed monsters charged out. They wanted nothing but blood, ready to tear everyone apart for trophies. A chaotic free-for-all began. Guild alliances meant absolutely nothing now. This was a pure, brutal fight to the death. Things were moving way too fast. The horde was ruthless, and survival was suddenly anything but guaranteed. In the middle of the madness, the Messiah Guild stepped up. They unleashed their magic together, creating a solid wall to block the horde. This gave their melee fighters the perfect opening to counterattack the monsters. Inside this absolute meat grinder, it was impossible to tell friend from foe. Because of the chaos, absolutely nobody noticed that Eugen had quietly vanished. He crouched high in a tree, watching the chaos unfold while waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He planned every detail in advance. While others fought, he prepared his quiet move. Wujin decided to exploit the massive clash and track down the elusive orc warrior. His quest was clear: the powerful orc warrior and 1,000 of his minions had to be eliminated. But first, the guild forces had to thin out the army of ordinary goblins. Only after that could they hunt the boss. Wujin specifically needed to claim the orc warrior's fang. The brutal target was resting in a deeper dungeon section, far from the battle. He sat listening to reports from his monsters, wearing the prized fang as a grim necklace. The savage clash between his underlings finished, and the massive boss stood to greet the lone victor. But a sudden warning changed everything. Players had successfully infiltrated their dungeon domain. Furious, the commander immediately sent his elite troops to slaughter them. Wujin watched it all unfold. Hidden away, he realized that stalking the fleeing goblin was a brilliant move on his part. Now the powerful boss was left almost entirely isolated, though he still radiated an immense, terrifying pressure. And let me tell you, even alone, this monster looked incredibly lethal. He waited patiently for every single guard to leave the chamber before deciding it was time. Wujin prepared to make his move, aiming to close the gap and land a devastating first blow. Meanwhile, the frontline battle was proceeding flawlessly for the powerful Messiah Guild. However, they noticed that a large chunk of the enemy army was still missing. The seasoned players knew the rest of the beasts were lurking nearby. Just then, an exhausted fighter rushed back with an urgent report. A massive wave of goblins was charging right at them, shocking the leader. He suggested a quick retreat to gather better gear before facing the main goblin army head-on. But the stubborn fighters of the Lion Guild refused to take orders from a cowardly commander. With the enemy approaching, the Messiah Guild suggested they work together. A combined defense was their only hope, or they would all die inside. Unfortunately, his desperate warning fell on deaf ears. Arrogant players from the rival groups charged straight into the goblin horde all on their own. Suddenly, two massive skeletons with burning eyes materialized right before the giant orc. Wujin had summoned these giants after defeating the strongest goblin chieftains in the dungeon. These strange undead invaders thoroughly amused the beast, prompting him to stand up. Towering over them, he prepared to crush the intruders, while Wujin braced for impact. The young hunter quietly drew a special arrow coated in highly lethal, toxic blood. His skeletons lunged forward in a synchronized strike, while Wujin carefully aimed his bow. Holding his breath for the perfect shot, he watched as the boss readied his weapon. The brutal clash exploded instantly, and in just a few heartbeats, a skeleton was shattered. The giant easily cleaved through bone with his massive battle axe, completely unfazed by the threat. The summons barely slowed the boss down, leaving Wujin with very few options. He only had a single shot to make this work, and it had to be flawless. His toxic arrow needed to strike a critical vulnerability to let the deadly poison take hold. Meanwhile, his remaining skeleton servant was taking heavy damage and wouldn't survive much longer. Feeling the pressure, Wujin fully drew his bowstring back, channeling every ounce of focus. He released the bowstring, but the monstrous boss dodged with unbelievable speed. The toxic projectile whizzed harmlessly into the dark, completely missing the agile target. This was bad. The boss was far faster and more dangerous than Wujin had anticipated. His final skeleton kept up the desperate struggle, but its remaining life force was fading fast. The fight is wrapping up. The goblin shatters his sword, leaving him with nothing. He has no allies left, and the monster hasn't taken any real damage. A change of plans is vital. fighting while that fang is active is completely useless. Wu Jin flees, shocked that the giant goblin doesn't even try to pursue him. Apparently, chasing a retreating enemy is way beneath a royal monster's dignity. He doesn't care. This prideful mistake is a total lifesaver for the guy. Running away at breakneck speed, he starts planning his eventual return. He'll make that massive orc deeply regret letting him walk away alive. Meanwhile, nearby players hear the massive commotion echoing through the thick forest. Who is fleeing? They have absolutely no clue, and there's no time to check. They wonder if this mystery player actually found the orc warrior or just ran in terror. But while they stand there debating, a sudden shadow moves among them. In a flash, one of their companions drops dead, leaving the survivor completely paralyzed. Talk about a total nightmare. He's suddenly alone with absolutely no clues. The system never mentioned any high-level monsters lurking in this starting zone. Which means this killer isn't a beast, it's something much worse. Terrified, the survivor looks around as Wu Jin reaches the player camp. Many players have gathered here to set up a makeshift shelter for the night. Nobody even glances at him because the entire camp is drowning in misery. And it doesn't take long. Wu Jin sees exactly why they're so depressed. Rows of fresh dirt and graves cover the ground, showing the brutal cost of day one. Something is deeply wrong. These aren't just normal casualties of battle. It's clear a brutal war between the rival guilds has already broken out. Rival players glare, constantly calling each other weaklings. Rumors spread fast that the powerful Lion Guild took the absolute heaviest losses. One of their search parties headed deep into the woods, but never returned. Nobody knows what caught them, but their final moments must have been pure horror. The forest is full of mutilated remains, proving the orcs had a feast. Despair reigns. Everyone in camp is completely broken. They no longer believe they can clear this zone, let alone survive. Honestly, you can't blame them. There's something seriously creepy going on here. Sure, deaths are normal in these dungeons, and life is incredibly cheap. But losing this many fully geared squads in a single day makes no sense. The math just doesn't add up, suggesting a hidden threat is at play. If the players break and run, Wu Jin's entire plan falls apart completely. Morning arrives, earth-shaking tremors begin to shatter the quiet dawn. The ground shakes violently under the weight of thousands of marching feet. A massive tide of monsters floods the battlefield, completely trapping the players. Terrified survivors watch in absolute horror as the endless green wave approaches. The orc commander roars the attack command, plunging the camp into total chaos. By now, Wu Jin has already slipped away, hearing the distant war cries start. He knows the second day of this brutal war has officially begun. Checking his gear, he prepares a precise strategy to take down the orc warrior. He'll land the killing blow while his summoned skeleton acts as the perfect distraction. Meanwhile, the arrogant orc leader sits calmly on his throne, completely oblivious. Feeling his own raw strength, that smug confidence only amused Wu Jin, who knew exactly what kind of tricks the beast was going to pull in this fight. The monstrous orc activated his warrior's fang, bracing himself for the clash. The giant beast lunged upward, aiming to crush the player. Right then, he felt sharp arrows pierce his thick back, fired by skeleton archers. Their task today was simply to draw his aggro. The monster immediately charged at them, leaving Wu Jin completely alone. This was exactly what Wu Jin wanted. He leaped upward, aiming to land right on top of the distracted monster. Everything was playing out exactly as planned. The skeleton summons kept peppering the beast with arrows, keeping his attention totally locked. On them, Wu Jin flipped gracefully midair, dropping straight down toward the monster from behind to secure the ultimate sneak attack. Right on target, the young necromancer plummeted down from the sky, slicing the cord holding the orc's fang with his sharp sword. The precious relic broke free from the beast's neck and flew straight into Wu Jin's hand. Our clever player instantly activated the relic, boosting his own stats thanks to acquiring the powerful orc lord's fang. Meanwhile, the monster's attack power took a massive hit, and his heavy defenses collapsed. Now, the relentless arrows shot by the skeleton warriors deeply pierced the monster's thick skin. Soon, a deadly toxin seeped into the monster's bloodstream, causing him to wither. The stolen orc lord's fang carried immense power, granting a massive stamina boost to Wu Jin, alongside a spike in both offensive and physical defense stats. With the passive buffs active, Wu Jin prepared to deliver the final strike. But first, he needed a much heavier weapon. The monster was now so crippled by poison that he collapsed to the ground, allowing the skeleton summons to relentlessly beat him. Down, dragging up his last remaining strength, the desperate beast struggled to his feet, aiming to take Wujin down with him, but the player was already closing in. Wujin leaped high and severed the giant arm holding the heavy battle axe with a single slash. Right then, that massive weapon fell right into Wujin's grasp. One of his skeleton soldiers grabbed the heavy axe and charged the crippled beast, holding the perfect weapon to slice off its head. Meanwhile, deep in the surrounding forest, another player suddenly heard something unusual. It was definitely not the standard battle cries of these wild monsters. Sensing something big, the rogue scout moved in to investigate who was actually fighting in this sector, planning to report back to his guild immediately. He crept closer to the echoing sounds and suddenly froze atop a high ridge, absolutely stunned. By the sight, an impossible battle unfolded right below him. Two glowing skeleton summons and a single player were systematically executing the high-ranking orc lord, with zero backups anywhere in sight. This completely unknown player was soloing a dungeon boss. It was insane. He had to send this information to headquarters right now, prompting the scout to bolt back, throwing all stealth aside, sprinting blindly through the trees. He never saw the silent projectile coming. A stray arrow suddenly pierced his spine, halting him cold, confused and bleeding. He gasped, clutching his wound in complete shock. Perhaps a hostile player caught him snooping and shot him to keep this entire fight a secret. But then a terrifying presence materialized directly behind the wounded scout. It was no human player. The creeping shadow radiated a deadly, freezing aura, proving that this thing was entirely undead, a high-level skeleton warrior. It was part of Wujin's lethal army. Before the spy could even scream, a cold blade pierced clean through his chest. Standing over the cold body, the stranger crossed another target off his notebook with a cold grin. He muttered that nothing beats fighting an orc except for putting down another player. A masked killer quickly reminded him they had to share the loot. It was painfully clear that for these ruthless players, murdering their own comrades was a daily routine. He had no grudge against the guy currently fighting the giant orc. The poor target was not on their list, but he still had to be eliminated. They just needed him gone. They had to steal the final rewards. Once the battle ended, he would be exhausted, an incredibly easy kill. The lilac-haired player wearing the skull mask was clearly the one in charge. He coldly ordered his subordinate to clean up the blood so nobody would suspect them. Their plan was simple: just drag the dead scout to the hungry wild beasts. The orcs would devour the poor guy and leave absolutely no evidence behind. From the shadows nearby, Wujin quietly watched and recorded every detail with his own eyes. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, the other players were counting their kills. They buried their dead comrades while bragging about their kills. Every player was highly confident they would clear this dungeon in absolutely no time. However, their cautious leader did not want to overwork himself or exhaust his entire party. He decided to pull back to the safe zone once this fight ended. By tomorrow, everyone would start planning their massive raid on the orc champion. The leader wanted to prepare for that final showdown while the others blindly wasted their energy. Suddenly, a sharp system notification announced a major game update. Every player froze in place, listening intently to the global announcement. The champion was dead. The system declared he was completely defeated. Confusion spread instantly. Nobody knew who could have pulled it off. All the elite guild squads were still miles away, fighting basic monsters. In reality, Wu Jin and his newly summoned skeletal minions had already crushed the boss. His level surged, and the system rewarded him with a mysterious book. This ancient catalog held the dark and terrifying power of Osiris. It served as an ancient pocket repository, capable of holding 5 powerful undead warriors. Inside, their memories could be stored and their base stats massively boosted. Wu Jin was eager to test out this incredible new tool immediately. He instantly activated the catalog, and a flood of new system information filled his mind. What he discovered next was completely unexpected and totally broken. Now he could summon his skeletons instantly upon entering any dungeon. No more limits. This book completely removed the worst drawback of his skill. It was a massive win. Meanwhile, the other players wanted answers. They scrambled wildly across the dungeon floor, hunting for the lucky expert who stole it. The party leader needed to investigate this personally before talking to Parkun. He had to find a plausible explanation once he logged out, because every single guild member knew that Parkun's terrifying wrath was far worse than death. Over in another corridor, the Skull Guild was absolutely furious. They could not believe the boss had been taken down so fast. Ultimately, they decided to leave the mysterious expert alone for now and get rid of other targets. The assassins began scanning the area for their lookout, who kept order. But to their horror, their own man had completely vanished. If the Skull Guild was exposed, the bosses would go ballistic. They could not let that happen under any circumstances. It was too high a risk. Worse, they would choose death over exposure, then a newcomer. He charged right at them, trailed by skeleton warriors. Panic erupted immediately. Their cover was completely blown, and they were trapped. They froze. The leader realized this newcomer was actively attacking them. If this battle dragged on, it would definitely draw the attention of other guilds. That would spell absolute ruin for the Skull Guild. They had to slaughter this guy and erase every shred of evidence, immediately. The leader hesitated for a split second, but when he turned to his squad, he froze. A complete bloodbath. It is wild how fast his skeleton forces ripped them apart. And standing right where that mysterious newcomer had been just a moment ago was Wu Jin himself. He knew exactly whose fault it was that only half of them survived back then. This rookie's mind held absolutely nothing about the Messiah Guild. Still, Wu Jin managed to link the Skull Guild directly to them. Stealing a dead Skull member's uniform, he quietly slipped right into the heart of their camp. He destroyed them completely from the inside, while his skeletons pinned down the regular members, letting Wu Jin corner the terrified leader himself. Wu Jin looked around, realizing every single backstabbing traitor from his past memories was gathered right here. One player begged desperately for mercy, but skeletons do not feel pity. Wu Jin slowly approached the leader, who saw only cold, unhesitating death. This kid had killed before, many times. The leader also realized that even if he escaped alive, he would only be a major liability to his master. Ending his own life was the only clean option left for everyone. He drew his blade and stabbed himself, proving his secrets were worth dying for. Wu Jin activated the Eye of Anubis, seizing the dead man's memories. He saw secret meetings in Japan discussing how Li Jun was secretly colluding with other powerful forces to expand their reach. They sent Sun Chan to Korea to infiltrate the Skull Guild. The goal was to seize Japan's dungeons and steal every rare artifact. They were going to build an empire far more powerful than anything seen before. The Yamato State, Sun Chan was introduced to the powerful figures backing this path. These Japanese power players were ready to fund this new nation. And looking closely at their faces, get this, Wu Jin recognized them instantly. Sun Chan was absolutely thrilled to personally meet Master Archer and the Master Swordsman. They wanted one specific target dead the moment the A+ level dungeon opened up. His name was Su Wung, a highly successful Korean broker who blocked their operations. Wu Jin kept scrolling through the dead man's memories, utterly shocked that the sole motivation behind all these horrific murders was simple vanity. Among those traitors were Master Swordsman and Master Archer. In his past life, Wu Jin had conquered countless dungeons right beside them. They supposedly fought to save the world, and he had desperately wanted to be just like them. They weren't just mentors, they were his moral compass, trusted comrades he could trust with his very life. But now, it was clear they were no different from Li Jun himself. This time, he would make absolutely sure their plans failed. His next target would be the dungeon broker, O.C. Chan. Apparently the man was highly talented if the Japanese wanted him dead, and Li Si Jun would surely benefit. But while O.C. Chan remained on that hit list, the attempts would continue. Perhaps Wu Jin could find a way to dismantle the group from within. After all, he needed a trustworthy broker to locate dungeons, making this partnership mutually beneficial. Meanwhile, agents waiting for the raid to end sat waiting inside their parked cars. Just outside the dungeon site, they knew that once the gate cleared, absolute chaos would erupt. Reporters would swarm the area, while players fought over the hard-earned loot. Aside from the righteous Messiah Guild, everyone else wanted a piece of the pie. Every scavenger present hoped to grab at least one rare relic from the dungeon. But for now, they could only wait. Then, a sudden movement caught their eye. The portal gates suddenly flickered to life. A single shadow began to step through. Out stumbled a heavily injured but very alive survivor. It was Wu Jin. Honestly, absolutely nobody expected a lone survivor to emerge. By the next morning, every major global news outlet was covering the shocking upset. Headlines screamed that the entire Skull Guild party had been wiped out inside. Even Wilder, the mysterious player who took down the Orc champion, remained completely anonymous. With the reward missing, furious infighting broke out among the rival guilds. Park Yunwon was absolutely livid. How could they not find the guy? His useless subordinates, terrified of his wrath, could only bow and apologize. They kept swearing they did everything possible to track the target down. They begged for another chance, but lost time and money were gone forever. Park Yunwon made it very clear that he was not running a charity here. In this business, nobody gets endless opportunities to mess up a high-stakes job. The boss issued a cold ultimatum: pay back 5 times the loss within 1 week. That was their only lifeline. Once alone with his secretary, his mood shifted. Park Yunwon quietly asked where they could find the mysterious survivor, Woo Jin. It turned out the kid was currently recovering from serious dungeon wounds at a hospital. Interestingly, the boy claimed a monster did not cause his injuries, implying human sabotage. This meant another hostile guild had ambushed him. The secretary offered some advice. Facts get distorted quickly. They needed to hear the story directly from him. The decision was made. They would head straight to the hospital to confront Woo Jin. By the time they arrived, several high-profile guests were already sniffing around. Everyone wanted a piece of the talented rookie, turning the hospital ward into a circus. Rivals had already tried questioning him, but the kid claimed absolute memory loss. Park Yunwon stepped into the room, determined to extract the truth himself. He had already planned to recruit Woo Jin into his personal squad. Recognizing that the boy was playing dumb, he needed to break his silence quickly. Just as Woo Jin predicted, the next wave of powerful vultures entered his room. Park Yunwon himself walked in, flanked by his sharp secretary. Acting clueless, Woo Jin began spinning a story about the Skull Guild. He claimed he saw those mysterious players target and slay the orc champion. But immediately afterward, a hidden group ambushed them and stole all their loot. They used a powerful stealth skill to vanish without a trace. The guild boss listened closely, trying to spot any holes in the story. He knew all about this skill. It makes the user completely invisible. Now it was obvious the killer's real target was the massive orc champion. He realized that without his poison blood trait, he would be dead already. The shadow assassin was instantly exposed the second his poisoned blood splashed them. Woo Jin had survived on pure luck, becoming the sole witness to the bloody ambush. He had to play it incredibly safe. Meanwhile, Park Yunwon was raging. The schemers from the Skull Guild had just cost him an absolute fortune. He had to gather massive intel on them to cut his losses. Luckily, Kim Woo-jin stepped up and provided the perfect bargaining chip. The boss instantly demanded to know his price, thinking the rookie was a spy. He assumed the kid was just scouting, but watch how easily the rookie takes control. His target was a legendary broker named Oh Si-chan, an impossible contact. Park Yunwon readily agreed to help, since Woo Jin had delivered such crucial info. The powerhouse boss promised to personally connect him to this exclusive dealer. Sure, this mysterious broker only picks top-tier clients, but Park guaranteed his work. Before leaving, he sternly warned Woo Jin to keep every single detail classified. One leak in his life was over, but so far the plan was flawless. And Woo Jin didn't mind that the powerful boss still didn't fully trust him. But it was clear the boss remained completely blind to the real danger. The hidden link between the Messiah and Skull Guilds was a lethal trap. He would instantly become their next target. Meanwhile, Woo Jin kept his injury secret. While Lee Si-jun and Park Yunwon panicked, Woo Jin calmly focused on grinding. The Skull Guild was absolutely massive, but they lacked any legitimate corporate backing. They kept their pockets full by smuggling and selling rare dungeon loot overseas. Tracing foreign black markets was the only way to track down their illegal funding. But Park Yunwon knew these international brokers were nothing but dangerous thugs. The very next day, Woo Jin was officially discharged from the hospital, fully recovered. Right on cue, the exact phone call he had been waiting for arrived. The young man asked the broker to secure more dungeons, but Si-chan wanted proof. Woo Jin sent him a detailed message listing all of his current stats. That message popped up on Oh Si-chan's phone, confirming he was the mysterious broker. Sean, his blonde assistant, was shocked his boss was taking clients again. Would this rookie try to kill him too? Si-chan remained completely unfazed. He stayed calm, viewing these fools as expendable, no matter who backed them. Park's backing meant nothing. This stranger was useless until he passed his trial. Even if the rookie wanted to kill him, it wouldn't happen anytime soon. He lacked the raw strength. After all, if players were actually that overpowered, These dungeons would have been cleared long ago. Si-chan reached for another device. He muttered that they needed more reckless fools, tossing his phone into a box. It landed in a massive pile of burner phones as Sean watched the rookie. But Si-chan didn't care. He knew the rookie wasn't ready yet. He wasn't even capable of clearing a dungeon solo yet, so the broker set a trap. The rookie was sent to the Cobalt dungeon. Now we wait for the chaos. It was a brutal, high-risk play, but Si-chan wasn't forcing his hand. He wasn't forcing anyone. The kid could back out, but Wu Jin was already driving straight to the gate. A massive crater scars the earth, a faint glow flickering deep inside. The young man stands right at the edge. He knows this challenge is going to be brutal, since nobody has ever walked away with any rewards. From this Cobalt dungeon, only total rookies struggle here, who have absolutely no idea how to crush these monsters. Meanwhile, a silent observer watches him. It is broker Sean's secretary. She spots Wu Jin calmly making his way toward the dungeon gate. This news shocks her boss. He realizes this young man is dead serious, and immediately begins preparing. Surprisingly, it looks like Wu Jin didn't bring any special gear. No special gear at all. Is he completely crazy, or is he just insanely confident? If his massive confidence is real, a very interesting partnership lies ahead. Meanwhile, the Messiah Guild holds a secret meeting. Guild representative Kim Jae-hun points out there is no reason to panic just yet. Even if those boys returned completely empty-handed, their total losses are actually pretty minor. His incredibly cold, dismissive attitude instantly triggers absolute, pure fury in his partner. 5 of his own students just died. It is clear Lee Jun knows all about their secret connections with the Skull Guild. He quickly suggests a brand new mission. A high-stakes mission inside an A+ level dungeon. Of course, nobody can predict the future. But it looks like their own guild members were wiped out right alongside the orcs. They fell alongside the vicious orcs, forcing a tense Kim Jae-hun to quickly apologize. He desperately begs for a little more time to fully investigate the entire matter. But Archer and Swordsman are already handling it. They offer their partner a drink. After all, they are supposed to be allies. No matter the grudge, a glass of sake fixes everything. But Kim Jae-hun holds the glass in sheer terror. He knows a single drop of this highly lethal poison could stop his heart instantly. Cursing his own stupidity, he underestimated Archer and Swordsman. A backup plan is needed, while the dangerous duo casually leaves. It went exactly as they expected. The targets on their hit list are not actually involved in this, which means someone else is pulling the strings behind the scenes. And if this mysterious enemy is not on their list of known killers, things get wild. They likely belong to a completely unknown and secret faction. For now, their immediate focus shifts straight to the mysterious Phoenix. Meanwhile, near the Cobalt dungeon, 2 managers watch a lone player. They assume he is just another suicidal idiot who will die soon. So they stay put, waiting for the dungeon gate to finally open up for them. But the raid wraps up way faster than they anticipated. They expect nasty Cobalt spirits to come pouring right out of the gate. Instead, they find the entire dungeon has already been completely cleared. A single hunter cleared what a massive, well-equipped crowd could barely survive. Yet this single player is already casually driving away in a yellow car. The absolutely furious broker, Sean, screams at his staff for letting him go. But his secretary remains perfectly calm, telling him not to worry. If he is with Wu Jin, he will return soon. Secretary Lee has always been this cold and level-headed. Just then, the player returns from the store with tons of gear. All because he had to wait so long for the Cobalt dungeon cleanup results. But to everyone's absolute shock, the dungeon had already been cleared by a player named Kim Woo-jin. When the young man finished up his mission, there was a radio waiting on his car hood. He grabbed it, still not knowing if the broker would even make a deal. Meanwhile, Kim Yi-hoon was absolutely furious. He was terrified to face his master in this state. Right then, Park Young-wan was sitting down with a stranger at a cafe, wanting to settle things. Quietly and without any drama, just like always, he told the guest he'd need him to keep one specific target safe. The stranger and his crew had to keep him alive and assist his escape. Meanwhile, 2 men watched their meeting closely. They knew Park Young-wan held massive influence, but it was highly unlikely he knew a thing about the Skull Guild. Under that facade, the master claimed he just wanted some business intel on the Skull Guild, but he also brought up something else that felt incredibly strange, sensing that His contact was being overly cautious. He decided to drop a single detail. He knew the secret behind those Skull Guild members who died in that A-plus dungeon. Kim Yi-hoon never expected the master to possess this information, if it was true. Then his problems were about to get a lot worse. He asked around about who the boss had met with today. It was Jiang Hunyang, a rogue mercenary who never joined a guild and would take literally any job for the right price. Yi-hoon thanked his source for passing info to the Messiah Guild, then went to confront the mercenary directly. He got straight to business, presenting an offer to Jiang Hunyang. An offer backed by the Messiah Guild that promised a massive payday for him. Secretary Kim delivered the report to her boss, but it was clear that his mind was already drifting elsewhere. Park Youngwan believed that the Skull Guild would be forced to move now that he had stirred the pot. Now it was finally time to set the stage for our main character, Kim Woo-jin. Kept analyzing the active pieces, calculating exactly what they were planning next. Jiang Hunyang assumed they were guarding an incredibly high-profile target, since 5 elite players were already assigned to this exact operation, and yet everyone whispered one name, Kim Woo-jin. Yi-hoon noticed it immediately. His name was listed among the players entering that deadly A-plus dungeon. There was no way he planned to fight the entire Skull Guild alone. It looked like an obvious trap. Finally, the radio crackled and the young man could speak to his contact. He was told he had successfully passed the test. Though it was a mystery how he concealed his true strength, Woo Jin countered. He never wanted to show off, but the broker had forced his hand. Then they got down to business. The broker explained that he had left a fresh list of dungeons inside a locker at the train station. He could check them and call back later, but Woo Jin replied that he would call in a few days because he had far more important things to handle right now. The broker was utterly speechless at his audacity, but chose to wait and see how things unfold. Around that time, Kim Woo-jin met face-to-face with Park Youngwan, who laid out a plan that was incredibly dangerous since Woo-jin was meant to play the role of bait, and the boss coldly confirmed that exact setup. Serious rumors constantly surrounded the infamous Skull Guild. However, there was still absolutely nothing to fear. Park Youngwan hired veteran fighters for him. They would raid the dungeon together. Still, Woo Jin had heavy doubts. He knew his life was on the line. He hated it. He admitted to owing them several debts, but the clever guy demanded a raise. A satisfied Park Youngwan decided that he held all the cards. Suddenly, Secretary Kim announced another big surprise. Powering up meant better survival rates. It was a massive deal. He handed over a valuable skill page. Woo Jin quickly realized that Park Youngwan was a dirty traitor whose greedy interests never really changed. Still, he was curious. What new skill did he receive? The final result was a shock. Meanwhile, a desperate team arrived. At another dungeon, they urgently needed cash to pay off debts. They hated the forced raid, but Park Youngwan left them no choice. It wasn't their fault the Skull Guild had been wiped out. They had no clue who did it. They were tired of wandering around. They just wanted to kill monsters for money. Unbeknownst to them, a silent figure watched from behind a rock. His face was hidden by a Skull Guild mask. Later, a secret meeting took place. The mercenary arrived to discuss details. The deal was simple: deliver Woo Jin. Suddenly, the corrupt Park Youngwan called him. Things went sideways incredibly fast. The contact was completely different. Meanwhile, the gangsters received a massive suitcase of money, but Yong Hunyang demanded more for the risks. Woo Jin calmly agreed. If cash was the real issue, he would pay extra after the job, plus secure a new client. But the greedy mercenary had other ideas and made a counteroffer. He wanted a deal with the Messiah Guild, but Woo Jin declined, stating this was strictly a private request outside the guild. The call ended. Mercenary Yong Hunyang grinned at his crew. They had struck gold. This mission would make them incredibly rich. In reality, he didn't care what happened to the others. He just wanted the money to enjoy a long, luxurious retirement. Elsewhere, another dungeon was cleared. The players involved actually belonged to the Skull Guild, surviving without a scratch. Frantic Phoenix Guild managers rushed forward, desperate for answers about where their own players were. Unfortunately, those victims belonged to Park Youngwan's faction. Nobody found out their fate, leaving the managers frantic to find some information to pass on to the grieving families. Finally, a survivor spoke. The bodies had been torn to pieces. Absolutely nothing remained. The annoyed manager dismissed this, assuming they were just bragging idiots. Meanwhile, the Skull Guild players remembered their master's warnings. Stay quiet elsewhere, Matsumoto gave a report to his contact. Asking for their next task, Jae-hoon ordered them to prepare for a raid immediately after sunset. He emphasized that this rare opportunity was not to be missed. This was an absolute order that nobody could ignore. Their next destination was a brutal second-level dungeon to hunt a lizard warrior. Park Yoon-won plotted how. Brilliantly, he was using the Skull Guild to launch himself onto the international stage. Even if things went sideways and Kim Woo-jin ended up dead, he would still walk away with priceless data on the Skull Guild. As the players assembled at the raid site, Kim Woo-jin calmly joined the group. They greeted him warmly, advising him not to wander off and to stay close. Jang Hunyang stood before him, demanding a quick and flawless clear of the dungeon. Right after that, another squad of players arrived to join the upcoming raid. Kim Woo-jin immediately recognized some familiar faces from the Skull Guild among them. Deciding to avoid any unnecessary drama, he quietly slipped away to the restroom to dodge them. Once he stepped out, a player approached him, whispering that they urgently needed to talk. It turned out this guy was ordered by Park Yoon-won to watch over Kim Woo-jin. This secret mission was strictly between them, while the rest of the squad remained completely blind. The mercenary warned that they must not be seen working together inside the dungeon. They would trail close by, especially since an ambush likely awaited them on level 2. They had to avoid infighting early on, or clearing the entire dungeon would become impossible. All Kim Woo-jin had to do was trust him and keep his cool. Before long, the entire raid party stepped through the portal and entered the dark dungeon. Suddenly, a system alert popped up, warning them to eliminate a nearby scout goblin. Taking it out now would prevent a massive monster horde from swarming. With the area feeling like a standard maze, the mercenary announced that the clearing requirements were simple, so they should split up and hunt individually. He even paired up certain players to make sure nobody was left wandering alone. With that, he barked orders for everyone to fan out, hunt the goblin, and advance. The raid party quickly dispersed, knowing the true nightmare would begin on the second floor. But within the ranks of the Skull Guild, some had darker plans brewing. The treacherous Kim Jae-hun was among them, harboring absolutely zero trust in his own mercenaries. He fully intended to betray and execute Jang Hunyang and his men when this was over. Meanwhile, the mercenary tasked with shadowing Kim Jae-hun somehow managed to lose him. He desperately searched the shadows, but the target was completely gone from his sight. Following the heavy metallic stench of fresh blood, they realized they were close, yet Kim Woo-jin was missing. Suddenly, they spotted a dead monster lying in pooling blood. But things were about to take a dark turn. 2 dead bodies lay nearby. It looked like the corpses of Kim Woo-jin and his trusted companion. A panicked healer rushed over to cast a recovery spell, but it was useless. The victim's throat was torn open, making it impossible to stem the fatal blood loss. Staring at the lifeless youth, the leader realized he had to revive Kim Woo-jin immediately. He absolutely had to deliver him to his client alive, no matter the cost. But the healer failed as the companion slipped away, bleeding out rapidly. It made zero sense, because these allies had no reason to fight each other. This bizarre betrayal clearly smelled of a deeper conspiracy involving the infamous Messiah Guild. They had to stay on high guard, especially as Jang Hunyang realized something chilling. He realized that Kim Jae-hun was planning to slaughter all of them next. The desperate healer kept channeling magic, but the companion kept bleeding out into the cold dirt. At that moment, a massive, terrifying skeleton warrior rises right over the doctor's lifeless body. It lunges straight at the players, and Kim Menik gets wiped out in an instant. The mercenary finally realizes their enemies purposefully injured Jin-wook just to reach the doctor. Game over. Kim Jae-hun had set them up from the very start. He should have seen this coming. Honestly, the whole setup was incredibly sketchy from day one. The job was sketchy. Now, giant skeletons swarm the mercenaries from all sides. Under relentless attack, Kim Jae-hun desperately tries to hold his ground and save his energy. One fighter, nicknamed Strongman, boasts that he loves slaughtering beasts. He slaughters every creature, completely ignoring their massive numerical advantage. See, he sprayed on some incredibly strong cologne earlier, and these beasts absolutely hate intense smells. Pure chaos, another massive wave of monsters spawns right on them. Zorviak tears through them instantly, The guy is a seasoned pro after all. He grabs the beasts by their jaws, brutally slamming their heads together. He kills them fast, steadily farming points without stopping for even a second. Meanwhile, deep in another corner of the dark dungeon, another scene unfolds. Mercenary John Hunyang lies bleeding out, while Kim Woo-jin stands over him unharmed. Completely untouched, the young man is no longer surprised by greedy players. They only use their strength for profit. Honestly, this mercenary's greed has crossed every line. After all, the mercenary believed that every person's worth is measured differently. He remembers their chat at the tavern yesterday when the mercenary asked a crucial question. He wanted to know what made this Kim guy so special to everyone. Especially since major players like Yan Wang and Kim Jae-hun were both incredibly interested in him. Back then, the mercenary promised he would hold back on his usual twisted hobby. He claimed he would not execute the client, knowing another sweet gig would always pop up. These monsters happily gossip about slaughtering innocent people for a fat paycheck. They actually prefer taking assassination contracts over clearing out dangerous dungeons. They prefer paid hits over dungeon raids, but unfortunately, not all lives are equal. Everything has a price tag, and some lives are simply cheaper than others. What they did not realize was that Jin was secretly listening to every word. Now the young warrior looms over the dying killer, asking how much his own life costs. Without waiting for an answer, he swings his blade, slicing the mercenary clean in half. Shortly after, Kim tracks down the goblin, hiding in the exact spot from his past life. Killing this creature is the only way to unlock the path to the dungeon's second floor. Just like that, the goblin is dead. Suddenly, a notification pops up. The first floor is completely cleared, leaving the Skull Guild absolutely baffled by the speed. They had no idea how it happened. Kim waits for a signal that never comes. Watching his boss, Matsumoto realizes things are going completely off script. Clearing the first floor this fast means the targets have already moved downstairs. They must be preparing an ambush, so the Skull Guild rushes to the next floor. No hesitation, the Skull Guild members rush straight to the second floor. At that exact moment, Kim Woo-jin stands right in front of the active portal. He is ready to cross. Reaching out, he touches the ancient door with his hand. Instantly, the massive gates to the second floor swing open. Meanwhile, back at the office, Kim's secretary reports that the young man recently purchased a strange liquid collection flask. It is a highly bizarre purchase right before entering a dangerous dungeon raid. Everyone knew that monster blood, skin, and fluids sold for high prices, but there were simply no valuable trophies in this dungeon, therefore buying a flask seemed completely pointless, meaning Woo-jin and Jeong-hoon had some kind of special plan. Soon, the Skull Guild players approached the entrance of the second level, completely unaware of what happened to the others, and assumed they had set up an ambush. The men cautiously stepped inside. There was only a deathly silence as a massive glowing eye stared at them. Matsumoto expected an immediate attack, but everything remained dead quiet. The massive warrior assumed the other players were just hiding in fear. Suddenly, arrows soaked in highly toxic blood rained down on them from every direction. They easily blocked the projectiles, but soon realized this is just a setup. The arrows shatter right against the cold stone floor because they have small vials of blood attached to them, spilling the fluid everywhere. The Skull players fail to see the punchline of this joke because now they are left completely exposed while being covered in disgusting, stinking blood. Kim Woo-jin quietly watches this unfold from behind a nearby boulder. He realizes his rivals have absolutely no idea what happened to the mercenaries and the other bandits. Woo-jin calls out, revealing he knows about their plan to eliminate mercenary Jo Hyun and his crew once this entire mission is finished. He also addresses Jeong-hoon directly, admitting he never expected to meet him here, especially alongside these Skull Guild members, but right at that very moment, their conversation is cut short as a second-floor dungeon monster suddenly appears. A massive lizard warrior creeps up silently through the dark water toward the players, suddenly lunging forward to swallow one of them completely whole. The remaining players recoil in absolute horror, having zero time to process this. It turns out the blood covering them belongs to a goblin. And goblins happen to be the favorite snack of these lizard warriors. Now the Skull members are on the menu. Enraged, Matsumoto charges at Woo-jin, leaving his allies behind to fend off the giant lizard on their own. First, he wants to tear this arrogant punk apart. Swords slide from sheaths. Wujin instantly notices that Matsumoto is wielding an incredibly fine master-grade blade. It turns out this brute is not just some gambler, he studied under a master. Swordsmith, meanwhile, Jiang-hun remains anxious about the mercenary and his crew. The four of them could easily clear out this entire place, but Jiang-hun stays out of the actual fight, continuing to wait for Zhou Haiyan and his team to arrive, terrified that they might walk right into a deadly trap. Right now, only one player battles the lizard warrior, while Wujin keeps trading heavy blows with Matsumoto. Wujin is amazed such a thug became a master swordsmith disciple. He managed to successfully provoke him with simple insults. But the guy is highly experienced and proves extremely tough to take down. After trading another fierce flurry of heavy strikes, Wujin bites down on his own tongue and spits blood directly into his opponent's eyes. Matsumoto is absolutely furious that anyone would dare spit blood right in his face, but the blood is laced with a lethal toxin, poisoning Matsumoto instantly. His stamina is draining fast. A prolonged battle now spells certain death for Matsumoto. Time to deal with him now. Matsumoto triggers his skills, ready to launch a deadly strike. Kim Wujin watches closely, wondering if this special technique belongs only to those blessed by the Nimbus. Desperate, Matsumoto squeezes out his final ounce of strength for one more strike. Lethal poison continues ravaging Matsumoto as he unleashes his ultimate skill, Executioner of Holy Light, Blade of Destruction, but he has barely any strength left to grip his sword. Still, Matsumoto knows he must capture the young man alive. But how did Kim Wujin easily dodge that devastating blade of destruction? Countering instantly, Kim Wujin unleashes a secret technique from his past life, a deadly move he practiced thousands of times on mere straw dummies. Matsumoto suddenly remembers the day he finally mastered his technique. When his master warned him, this style drains massive amounts of energy, and if any enemy survives, that person will bring swift death to him. Meanwhile, the Skull Gang gets completely wiped out, leaving only their leader, Kim Jae-un. The desperate survivor begs Kim Wujin for a truce, but the offer is coldly rejected. Clearing this dungeon is much faster solo. Terrified, Kim Jae-un flees into the shadows, knowing only escape can save him. Glancing back, he freezes at the sight of summoned skeleton warriors fighting a massive lizard. He never imagined a mere summon could move like a high-level player. And get this, there is not just one of them, there are 5. It turns out that Kim Wujin is terrifyingly strong, meaning he already wiped out Zhou Haiyan's entire team. This explains why they never showed up. Piecing together this horrifying puzzle, Kim Jae-un quietly slips away while the skeletons keep battling the beast. Now finally, the dark truth is fully laid bare to him. Escape is all Kim Jae-un needs to report this, but suddenly a monster lunges. The furious lizard warrior charges. Skeletons already slashed it with poison. Rapidly losing strength, the giant creature is near its limit. Suddenly, it collapses heavily. Kim Jae-un realizes the skeleton warriors successfully defeated it. Unbelievable power, yet the dying monster struggles to stand. Ignoring the skeleton warriors, the lizard charges directly at Kim Jae-un. Terrified, the player runs, clueless why he is being targeted. Kim Wujin watches quietly. He knows his target is panicking. Completely clueless, the panicking runner has absolutely no control over the situation. Explaining reality is a waste of time and energy for him. Kim Wujin remembers how mud was used in previous clears. It had to be smeared all over their bodies. You see, lizard warriors possess incredibly poor eyesight by completely masking themselves. In thick clay and mud, players easily blend in, although in reality, the beast is simply programmed to target only one specific player. Kim Jae-un cannot run forever, and he still has no clue why this beast targets him alone, while Kim Wujin stands back. Whenever the monster gets too close, the loyal skeleton warriors instantly defend their dark master. They block all paths, trapping the players. Suddenly, Kim Jae-un spots yet another terrifying skeleton standing right before him. A cold blade slashes down. He cannot believe what is happening as he falls to the ground, completely covered in fresh blood. The giant lizard is closing in fast, and Jae-hun cannot even crawl away from it. Completely paralyzed, he clutches his broken leg, swearing in absolute agony. He expects zero help from Wujin, as certain death stares him right in the face. Suddenly, crash, the massive beast collapses dead, just inches away from his terrified body. Jae-hun blinks in total shock, a sudden spark of hope flashing across his pale face. He watches the skeleton warrior impale the monster, realizing he might actually survive this. He gasps out a shaky thank you to Wu Jin for pulling the creature's aggro in time. But it is payoff time, and Jae-hun knows he must negotiate desperately for his life. He starts frantically offering Wu Jin piles of cold hard cash and massive bonuses just to escape. Wu Jin just sighs, casually telling the pathetic player he should probably ask someone else. But there is literally nobody else left alive inside this dark, completely abandoned dungeon depth. Wait, the lizard twitches. It is still breathing, and Wu Jin walks over to explain. See, there's a very simple, incredibly deadly reason why the beast only targets human prey. The monster tracks targets by heat. It has zero interest in cold, dry bones. But a warm, breathing human like him is the perfect snack before the beast dies. The next day, headlines are completely dominated by this terrifying dungeon monster. This new threat has everyone on edge, and major guilds are panicking. The famous Phoenix Guild has officially backed out, refusing to enter the incredibly dangerous zone. This is terrible news for Park Yeonwon, who had planned to dominate this high-level raid. Just like his assistant predicted, public opinion of his guild is hitting rock bottom. But Park Yeonwon completely ignores the crying weaklings, focusing solely on his ultimate grand dungeon goal. Suddenly, a shocking breaking news announcement completely interrupts the live television broadcast. The prestigious Messiah Guild has decided to postpone their entry into the dungeon. They claim they need a brief break to prepare for more difficult future conquests and fights. The broker laughs. Even the legendary Savior Guild is stalling their raid. People are whispering that this beast is the actual snake of death. After all, not a single hunter has ever returned alive from hunting this monster down. With absolutely zero data on the monster, heading inside is basically suicide. With such a dangerous threat loose in the country, public panic is spreading fast. Everyone is absolutely terrified, agreeing to stay far away from the incredibly dangerous dungeon gates. The public completely understands and supports the Messiah Guild's cautious decision. People trust their heroes blindly, never questioning their sudden hesitation. But while the big factions wait, a few brave and reckless souls might actually step up. The broker grins into his phone, eyes gleaming as a wild idea strikes him. What if some unknown challenger manages to defeat this beast right now? It would instantly become legendary, swimming in massive wealth without ever sharing their dungeon earnings. The broker is sure the top guilds are deliberately trying to buy more time. They want to quietly sweep the high-value dungeons and collect all the unclaimed loot. But the player who finally slays this tailed lizard will secure absolute fame and fortune. And that massive jackpot is exactly what Wu Jin is claiming right now. System notifications flood his vision as his overall level and skill ranks surge. His signature poison blood skill gets a massive upgrade, reaching an entirely new deadly tier. The fight ended incredibly fast, thanks to his heat-masked skeleton army. But messing with the Messiah Guild means he must tread very carefully from now on. His silent hunt just got highly complicated. This is a unique item, a high-tier blade forged by a legendary master swordsmith. Packed with insane skills and effects, Wu Jin hands it over to his skeleton. The soldier has a new toy for combat. Next, Wu Jin approaches Matsumoto's body. Activating the Eye of Anubis, he dives straight into the dead assassin's memories. With the loot secured and details gathered, the dungeon clearance is ready. The lone manager rushes over to meet Wu Jin, desperate to know what happened inside. Everyone is dead, Wu Jin tells him flat out, keeping his expression blank. He offers zero details, suggesting they write down that the boss was simply too strong. The lizard warrior was far more dangerous than anyone ever could have predicted. Heading to his trailer, Wu Jin dials his handler to report on the finished mission. Everything went down exactly as Park Yeonwon had predicted, he says over the line. One of their targets possessed a rare sword forged by a master craftsman. And that craftsman happens to be a high-ranking member of the Messiah Guild. He also runs the Yakamoto faction, but Wu Jin claims he found nothing else. But that is a lie, because Wu Jin actually uncovered a lot more. Wu Jin plans to call back once he processes all these fresh details. As he steps outside, a hidden camera lens glows a faint red on the TV screen. Reading Matsumoto's memories, he knew that spy camera was set up intentionally. Placed behind the screen to record anyone the guild wanted to keep tabs on. Matsumoto stayed quiet, knowing he was never the target of this surveillance. Now Wu Jin is setting a perfect trap, making the Skull Guild suspect Park Yongwan for everything. Right on cue, Park Yongwan calls to see if he found any updates. Wu Jin claims he found nothing because he was too busy fighting for his life. But he drops a massive bait. He knows where the Skull Guild leader is. They schedule a meeting for tomorrow to lock down the exact plan. Heading straight to the subway station, he looks for the secret storage locker. He hopes OC-chan's dungeon list contains some high-value spots to make serious cash. Sitting alone in his car, he spends the entire night analyzing every single lead. These dungeons are top tier, way better than anything else on the market. It is completely obvious why the Messiah Guild wanted this broker dead and buried. The detailed files inside are golden, revealing the guild's secret stash of dungeons. Now he understands exactly how they cornered the market on elite raids. Then his eyes lock onto a legendary prize, an albino lizard egg. This is something he has wanted for years, never expecting the broker to have it. Info on this rare egg is extremely scarce in the public database. Even Wu Jin has no idea what beast hatches from it, making it worth stealing. In his past life, only Lee Sejun knew the secret of this egg. Snatching this trophy might be his ticket to finally drawing out his sworn enemy. Without wasting a second, he picks up his radio and contacts OC-chan. The broker answers instantly, declaring that the time for their first deal has arrived. Come next morning, Wu Jin meets with Park Yongwan to lay out the details. He spins a story that the Skull Guild and the mercenaries wiped each other out. Then he drops a warning: one specific Skull member was exceptionally dangerous. This guy stood completely on another level compared to the rest. Judging by his high-end sword techniques, he was definitely linked to Yakamoto. In Japan, Park Yongwan suspected that rival guilds held immense sway behind the scenes. Once this Floor 6 dungeon was cleared, Park Yongwan planned to target the Japanese market, with every newspaper hyping up his upcoming raid plans to conquer it, but he warned Kim Woo Jin that rival guilds would be keeping a close eye on him as the sole survivor of that dungeon. Park advised the young man not to act alone, confirming that his payment had already been transferred directly into Kim Woo Jin's bank account. They parted ways, both holding their ground, but Kim Woo Jin knew that Park Yongwan would soon clash with the powerful Skull Guild, meaning he could safely ignore those warnings and continue his hunt. Kim Woo Jin headed to a quiet meeting inside an inconspicuous factory trailer. Preparations were already complete, and Secretary Lei was waiting inside. She doubted Kim Woo Jin would accept their strict conditions, but her boss told her to relax and just call him if anything went wrong. Meanwhile, Wu Jin approached the trailer to meet the broker, cracking the door open to hear the secretary telling Lee Jinna to prepare, though he hated that feminine-sounding name and begged her not to use it. That name was instantly familiar to Kim Woo Jin from the Phoenix Guild. Could it truly be him? He stepped inside, sliding the door fully open to find an unfamiliar man at the table alongside the waiting secretary. She explained that since the dungeon Kim Woo Jin chose was so high level, an examiner had to accompany him. If he agreed to those terms, he would sign the contract, but Kim Woo Jin immediately recognized this examiner as the immortal Lee Jinna, a player who could not be killed, who once escaped him twice in his past life. It was shocking to see him working with this broker, acting outraged at the idea of having an examiner tag along. It became clear they would be entering the gate as partners, so Kim Woo Jin started teasing him about his feminine name to get under his skin. It worked perfectly on the hot-headed tank. Kim Woo Jin then demanded to speak with the broker, using a radio to complain about this forced team-up. But the real issue was not just having a partner watch his every move. Kim Woo Jin simply had zero interest in babysitting someone during the raid, since absolutely anything could happen once they stepped past that gate. Lee Jinna realized the threat, hearing the subtle hint that some people do not make it out of dungeons alive. Offended, the tank barked back at the broker, calling his new client a complete lunatic. This bickering annoyed the broker, who quickly threatened to fire Lee Jinna. After that, their conversation ended, and the duo headed straight for the dungeon entrance. Outside, Lee Jinna warned the young man not to play any cheap tricks, stating that he would show zero mercy to anyone who bared their fangs at him. It was clear he was entirely serious, having done so many times before in similar situations, so Kim Woo Jin decided this ruthless partner would actually be useful. Back at the office, Secretary Lee reported that the boys had departed, worried about what might happen if Lee Jinna did not return, but the broker coldly promised that if that happened, Kim Woo-jin would become theirs instead. Personal enemy, passing through the portal, the guys land right inside the dungeon. A chilling system warning flashes. To clear this floor, they must defeat 111 ferocious wolves, Chainam immediately declares. He is ignoring Woo-jin completely. Why? Because he already beat him up. Sitting back on a cold rock, he decides to watch Woo-jin struggle. No helping, none, not until the guy starts begging for it. Looking at Woo-jin's stats, Chainam actually feels pretty sorry for him. He smugly tells him to drop to his knees right now. Beg for mercy, ask for help, maybe then he will save him. But Woo-jin is not listening. His mind is somewhere else entirely. He is busy analyzing Chainam's bizarre immortality. How does it work? Perhaps he received the River Styx blessing. Only desperate survivors get that legendary trait. It means even if his head gets severed or his heart is shredded, the guy simply refuses to die. Chainam thinks he is incredibly lucky, but against Woo-jin, not a chance. Woo-jin acts. He summons a skeleton soldier and gives a command. He wants to show Chainam what real power actually looks like. Right on cue, the wolves appear, ferocious, hungry, and fast. But the skeleton handles them easily. Chainam watches in total silence. It is a fragile skeleton, sure, but it fights like crazy. Every swing of its sword is precise. It moves like a pro. Plus, as Woo-jin levels up, his maximum summon count keeps climbing. Realizing how dangerous this necromancer is, Chainam decides he needs to report everything to his broker the second they escape this place. For now, Chainam acts casual, claiming he likes the show so far, although he smugly asserts that Woo-jin will definitely need his help later. Suddenly, the air around Chainam begins to warp and ripple. Skeletons surround Chainam, pointing weapons at his chest. Woo-jin merely smiles, repeating Chainam's own words about sitting back and watching. Sweating heavily now, Chainam quickly tries to laugh it off. He claims he was just joking and meant absolutely no offense. But the tension snaps. Chainam admits it was totally his fault. He said it to provoke him, and he instantly pays the price. Woo-jin lunges forward, slamming Chainam flat onto his back on the dirt. He praises Chainam for targeting the summoner instead of the minions. That was a smart move. Right now, Chainam's head is spinning. He realizes Woo-jin is hiding his true strength, predicting every movement. His true motive is completely unclear. Why did he meet the broker? Is he after Sechin, or is it Chainam himself? He demands answers. But Chainam claims he won't talk because he is great at secrets. Woo-jin chuckles, saying that doesn't seem true, but it doesn't matter. In a flash, one of the skeleton swords rests against Chainam's throat. Moments later, he is tightly bound, dangling high from a tree branch. Screaming, he demands to be let down immediately because he is starving. He acts like he'll starve to death, but Woo-jin just ignores him. And he did without delay. Woo-jin agreed to give the young man a chance, noting that he had already demonstrated his skills and now it was Jinna's turn. He suggested the young man become bait so that the skeleton warriors could easily attack the wolves. Do that and he is free. Refuse and he goes back to being hung. From the tree, left with no choice, Jinna agreed to play the tank. Soon, another pack of savage wolves rushed in, gnashing their massive jaws, hungry for a quick meal. Jinna immediately charged into the fight, realizing that the beasts were only multiplying by the second. Within minutes, the fighter himself was completely swallowed up as the clearing dissolved into a chaotic, swarming frenzy of bloodthirsty wolves. That was when the skeleton warriors made their move. The 5 summons quickly tore through the pack, slicing down the wild beasts. Soon enough, Jinna burst out from the pile of corpses, still fighting. And crushing those rabid wolves with his bare hands, he was doing incredibly well. Tearing down his foes and racking up experience to instantly level up. Observing this, Kim Woo-jin noted the guy was not fighting like before, meaning he would not be easy to kill, making him a highly valuable asset for later. The sun was already setting, yet the brutal battle against the wolves dragged on. Suddenly, a brand new pack surrounded Woo-jin himself. He joked about needing a break, casually claiming he was too exhausted to keep going. As the final wolf staggered forward, he left the finishing blow to his skeleton. The summon executed it perfectly, triggering a system alert that the first floor was officially cleared. Jinna was genuinely impressed by the undead fighters. pitying them only because their master seemed to constantly seek out trouble. The goofy brawler even tried to make friends with one of the summons. But they completely ignored him, leaving him deeply offended. Wu Jin just watched, wondering how such a powerhouse with near-immortal stats could act like a clueless teenager. Right now, the guy was literally flirting with a skeleton, asking if he could touch its bones, yet behind this goofy act was one of the strongest fighters alive, utilizing a unique, highly specialized combat style that prioritized skeletal force over flesh. This devastating method made it impossible for enemies to get close to him, yet, looking at him now, Wu Jin saw none of the dark malice that usually consumed the man. Something major must have broken him in the past to cause this personality shift. Maybe a painful loss had awakened his humanity. Meanwhile, Jinna was quietly studying his partner, realizing the kid had gathered this massive horde just to grind them down safely. This was no happy accident, it was a highly calculated move to reclaim his peak strength. This level of battlefield planning went far beyond basic dungeon knowledge, requiring absolute master-level control over every single variable. As frustrating as it was to admit, Wu Jin was superior in every possible way, and Jinna accepted it. Just then his thoughts were cut short by Wu Jin, who casually pointed toward the next floor, promising that things would get much more interesting up ahead. The portal flared, and the two stepped through to the second level. Jinna groaned aloud, complaining that he was so incredibly exhausted he might actually die on the spot. Wu Jin simply ignored the whining, remaining dead silent. He ignored the whining, pulled out vials, and asked if Jinna was a fast runner. No answer. Wu Jin just threw the glass vials straight onto the floor. They shattered instantly, leaving Jinna completely surrounded by spreading pools of dark blood. Standing confused in the blood, he listened as Wu Jin told him to run. Run, Jinna whipped around as a terrifying sound echoed from the trees. Out from the shadows crashed a massive, muscle-bound beast of absolute, terrifying destruction. Jinna did not waste a second, sprinting away while cursing Wu Jin at full volume. Meanwhile, breaking news confirmed that foreign players had successfully entered the lizard dungeon. It was a major development, though completely expected given how the situation was unfolding. Since the Messiah Guild refused to participate, this outcome was completely obvious. Still, nobody knew exactly how many external hunters were going to show up. The secretary promised to prepare a list before Jinna returned, praying for his safety. She sincerely hoped he would make it out alive, back inside the chaotic dungeon. Jinna was currently running for his life from a massive, terrifying albino lizard. His heels kicked up dust as Wu Jin's skeleton warriors charged into the fray. Jinna realized he was bait yet again. Honestly, who would not be totally fed up? Fed up with running, he dug his heels in and grabbed the lizard's massive jaw. He stopped the beast with brute force, screaming that he would definitely murder Wu Jin. Meanwhile, Wu Jin watched the entire chaotic spectacle from a safe cliff above, totally satisfied. He held on. Jinna struggled to keep the thrashing monster's jaw pried open. One of the skeleton warriors leapt high into the air with its sword raised. The undead soldier drove its toxic blade deep into the monster, triggering blood poison. The other skeleton warriors followed suit, repeatedly stabbing the giant albino lizard. Their coordinated strikes instantly pushed the blood poisoning effect to its absolute limit. Wu Jin kept analyzing the field, thoroughly impressed by his summon's high coordination. Under the relentless toxic assault, the lizard's health bar began rapidly draining. The beast convulsed in agony, completely overwhelmed by the spreading poison. Jinna quickly realized the blinded monster could only target him, ignoring the skeletons. While he struggled, Wu Jin just stood casually on the sidelines, enjoying the show. Too late. Before Jinna could escape, a devastating hit sent him flying. He was crushed instantly, but his unique skill brought him right back to life. By then, the massive beast had recovered, pushing Jinna past his breaking point. He was furious. Deciding to end this, he unleashed his full power. Armored gauntlets with lethal spikes materialized over his fists, ready to strike. He delivered a massive punch that sent the giant lizard stumbling backward. Seizing the opening, the skeleton warriors leapt forward to stab the beast. Distracted by Jinna's furious offense, the monster could only roar in pain. It tried to fight back, but the undead blades sliced deeper into its flesh. Deadly blood poison spread rapidly through the beast's entire circulatory system. Suddenly, a skeleton warrior dropped from above to deliver a final blow. The creature clung to life with its last breath, but the end was inevitable. The giant albino lizard was officially defeated, and Wu Jin stepped forward to claim his rewards. Suddenly, a bizarre, noseless goblin with massive fangs appeared and started destroying everything. The crazed creature immediately clashed with Wu Jin's newly armored skeleton warriors. From the sidelines, their dark master calmly observed their flawless performance. High above, a hooded stranger silently watched the ongoing battle of his summoned minions. Clumsy, slow, he couldn't understand why his skeleton warriors were moving so poorly. Frustrated, the stranger summoned even more skeletons to turn the tide. Together, they wiped out 50 trolls, but it still didn't grab the hero's attention. Who exactly was this incredibly powerful youth? Which god's favor did he actually possess? Wu Jin stood quietly over the massive corpse of the defeated albino lizard. Standing nearby, Jinnah complained about being starving and begged to leave. Wu Jin shook his head. The most important task was still ahead. He hadn't even told his partner the true objective as he approached the beast. He traced his hand along the massive, muscular belly of the dead monster. Finding the perfect spot, he sliced open the thick hide with his blade. Nestled deep inside the corpse was the dungeon's true prize, the albino lizard egg. Wu Jin knew the Messiah Guild had sacrificed everything to secure what lay within. Now he would finally uncover their secret. Nearby, Jinnah suddenly remembered the clear conditions. He realized with a shock that their clear condition was protecting this item. He knew the rules, but fighting all day had made him completely forget. But before he could react, Wu Jin slammed his sword hilt into the egg. Jinnah watched in pure horror, terrified of what this reckless move might trigger. But instead of danger, a glowing skill page floated out from the broken shell. It was the power of Apopi's, absolute immunity to every single type of poison. This was the legendary power that made the Poison King completely untouchable in battle. He never took a single scratch from any toxin, thanks to this broken skill. That monster had used it to terrorize others and execute them with lethal venoms. Back then, the Messiah Guild claimed they were going to bring him to justice. But that trial was a sham. Many innocent players lost their lives, even now. Wu Jin remembered every single comrade who had choked to death on that poison. He had only known the egg belonged to the guild, never imagining its contents. The truth hit him hard. The Poison King could never have stolen this skill. This meant the Messiah Guild had handed the power of Apopi's directly to him. They deliberately manufactured a deadly villain just to play the ultimate saviors. They fabricated a villain just to look like heroes. Once again, the painful truth sank in. His comrades died for nothing. His true enemy was Li Sijun. If only he had obtained this immunity sooner, so many lives could have been saved. But it was not too late to hunt down the mastermind behind it all. He had to pay. Wu Jin swore to end Sijun with his own hands. Jinnah noticed the sudden, heavy sadness on his partner's face, despite the incredible reward. He simply couldn't fathom the deep, dark history behind his friend's silent anger. With their task complete, the duo quietly slipped back to their playground hideout. The trailer was empty, but Jinnah spotted a bag waiting on the table. He expected a feast. Instead, he got nothing but disappointment. Inside lay only water and a radio. Suddenly, Si-chan's voice crackled through. The broker praised their incredible speed, amazed they completed the run so quickly. Despite the extreme difficulty of the dungeon, they cleared it with ease. But as they discussed the details, Si-chan delivered some troubling news. A major problem with foreign players was brewing, involving the massive overseas guilds. 5 major associations had joined forces. A legendary dragon hunter had captured a golden dragon in a level 5 dungeon, but when it first appeared, people only cared about its skin, which was incredibly durable and highly resistant to extreme heat. It made perfect armor, but it wasn't the skin that rewrote game history. It was actually the golden dragon's gastric juice. Wu Jin didn't know how to use it because he was already exiled back then. Later it turned out this fluid could dissolve Lei Jun's heavy seals and curses. The value of this acid went completely off the charts, and Wu Jin needed to secure it. Before anyone else found out, recently the broker filled the team in on what had happened over the past few days. Right after, Chinai had to report as an examiner on their progress inside the dungeon. The broker wasted no time and immediately ordered the young player to his office for a complete rundown on the mission. The constantly annoyed player, grumbling about absolutely everything, and everyone else headed over to report to Asachin. The guys were glad that their joint work was over, hoping never to cross paths again on future missions. Chinai kept complaining about being summoned so early, especially since he had already submitted his report the previous night. The boss explained he wanted to accelerate his plans, handing the young examiner some paperwork to review. It was a report about needle-tailed lizard, and 99 players had already signed up to participate. Chinai tried to guess what his boss was hinting at, since only Lee Sung had those legendary dragon hunting skills, but his level was way too high, meaning he couldn't enter such a high-tier dungeon. Could another hunter really possess similar abilities? As it turned out, the boss was talking about Kim Woo-jin, the young examiner's absolute worst nightmare, whom he swore he would never work with again. Just the day before, Chinai had filed a report confirming that Woo-jin's skills were incredible, but warned he had zero teamwork and serious personality issues, even calling him mentally ill. In response to these cries, the boss simply played a recording. It was Chinai's own voice, demanding a partner who would stay completely out of his way during battle. The young examiner was left totally speechless, realized he had walked right into his own trap, but the boss wasn't interested in hearing any more excuses, calmly stating that he had already registered both of them and prepared a perfect bait. He didn't explain what he meant by that. Meanwhile, in a desolate, abandoned suburb of Seoul where no signs of life existed, a quiet operation was taking place under the cover of darkness. Kim Woo-jin was carefully sharpening a sword on a lathe. The metal was heavily chipped, meaning he would eventually need to take it to a proper workshop, but first he wanted to inspect what was inside the briefcase sent over by the broker. Things were certainly getting interesting. The young man fully intended to put this new gear to use against the notorious Skull Guild. Meanwhile, the upcoming lizard dungeon was known to be filled with poison, and the government allowed a foreign guild to enter. This highly frustrated Chinai during his final preparations. Before long, Secretary Lee joined the tense conversation, voicing her deep concerns about the upcoming raid. It was highly expected that executing this mission would be incredibly difficult alongside someone like Kim Woo-jin. Secretary Lee then broke the news that the powerful Moscow Guild had the Russians had finished their bidding and brought along a special item. They prepared this gift for Woo-jin. Inside the suitcase lay a set of masks. Recent news confirmed that foreign players would be participating in the upcoming game. Everyone speculated on how the mission would unfold and who would win. Inside a newly built forest bunker, the Russian Moscow Guild held a secret meeting. Late into the night, one of the men complained about the extremely uncomfortable mask. Eating was impossible. This perpetually hungry player in the silly mask was Chin. His partner was Woo-jin, currently operating under the alias Isaac. Chin felt deeply nervous, knowing no one had ever returned alive from this dungeon. The tailed lizard dungeon was deadly, yet Woo-jin calmly studied his indicators. Showing absolute composure, he told his partner not to worry and just trust him. Woo-jin realized why he had never reached this tier in his past life. Chin begged him to fight together this time, instead of leaving him behind again. He dreaded a repeat of the last dungeon, while Woo-jin studied the legendary mask. The Grim Reaper's mask. He never expected the broker to have such a cool item. Just then the broker called, expressing how pleased he was with their recent dungeon clear. They had successfully secured the albino lizard egg, and now a new mission awaited. The broker wanted him to clear the notorious tailed lizard dungeon, offering a prime opportunity. To ensure Woo-jin accepted the dangerous job without hesitation, the broker offered an incentive. A legendary item was prepared to guarantee his swift participation in the raid. It was a legendary artifact that countless elite players could only dream of owning. Now it was in Woo-jin's hands, though he had never seen its power in action and had no idea of its exact effects. He readily accepted the broker's offer. Soon the doors opened, and the two representatives were summoned to the starting area. Disguised under entirely new identities, the duo prepared to begin the quest. They set off on the mission assigned by the mysterious broker. Before entering, a Stark system warning appeared, ordering them to survive 5 days inside the dungeon. And believe me, 5 days in this absolute hellhole was basically a death sentence. The surrounding players grew outraged, complaining about the sheer difficulty of the task. They knew 5 days of constant attacks meant they could easily be wiped out. Surviving alone would be nearly impossible, with countless monsters roaming the area. But before formulating a solid plan, the duo needed to test their current stats. Chin remembered his terrifying past test, where he had to fight off werewolves alone. He dreaded facing another ordeal like that and hoped Wu Jin would fight alongside him. Wu Jin reassured his anxious friend, promising to take part in the upcoming battle. He mentioned his newly acquired legendary item and expressed his desire to test it. The two headed off to a quiet, secluded area where no one would disturb them. Once they were alone, Wu Jin summoned a skeleton warrior to the field. The skeleton was wearing armor. Qin immediately began teasing and chatting with it. He asked if the armor felt stiff, while Wu Jin equipped the Grim Reaper's mask. It boosted his magic, regeneration, and connection with his undead summons. The massive boost in magic power created a deep, invisible bond between them. Now Wu Jin had to master the art of controlling his summoned soldier. He sent mental impulses through his hand, and a direct connection was established. Through this invisible link, commands from Wu Jin began flowing into the skeleton. Jinai kept playing with the skeleton warrior's head, completely clueless. He did not get why it was acting so incredibly weird. Suddenly, a very human voice came out of it, ordering Chinai to back off. The talking monster was terrifying. He had never seen anything like it. Strangely though, the skeleton warrior began moving in a very jerky way, stumbling around until it simply collapsed right in the middle of the grass. Chinai wanted to check if it was dead, but Wu Jin stopped him. Wu Jin realized managing this undead fighter was way harder than expected. Nearby, the other dungeon raiders huddled up to discuss their plans. A young man with glasses named Yun Chong from the Hat-Eye Guild spoke. He suggested taking things slow because they had zero info on the monsters. His idea was to watch the situation closely for a couple of days. Plus, joining forces with other players around seemed like a solid choice. Everyone here shared the exact same mindset, they just wanted to survive. Banding together was their best bet because the unknown was pretty scary. He knew no one had more influence than the mighty Messiah Guild. So sticking with the crowd was definitely their safest move. Far away from the main group, Chinai was busy practicing his strikes. He unleashed his signature etiquette injection, tearing through waves of goblins. This time he did not hold back and fully enjoyed bashing them. Then again, maybe he had actually gotten a whole lot stronger. While he rested, the skeleton warrior stepped up and sliced 2 goblins. This flawless display of skill instantly put Chinai in a terrible mood. It felt totally unfair because Wu Jin was just using a mask. Yet the skeleton was learning insanely fast, turning into a real beast. It struggled to walk at first and still fell down sometimes in battle. But now, smooth running, these undead summons were proving to be amazing. Controlling them with the mask made them absolutely vital to the team. It all felt so cheap. One guy had to act as a shield, fighting deadly monsters like a tank, while Wu Jin hid in a safe spot. Chinai watched this play out and was absolutely furious about it. Unbelievably, Wu Jin could summon a new skeleton through an existing one. This was a whole new level of mastery, and he knew it. He could summon while linked, which was a pretty crazy feat. The catch, it drained triple the mana, and his poison blood stayed locked. Oddly enough, the skeleton actually tried to make friends with Chinai. But Chinai was just mad. He had to act as bait for Bones. There was an obvious lack of communication between these two teammates. With zero mutual trust, proper teamwork was completely out of the question. Wu Jin eventually asked his partner how he was holding up after fighting. He had taken off his mask to rest, making Chinai immediately panic. The boy nervously backtracked, saying he had nothing against Wu Jin. He was only chatting with the skeletons, but then Wu Jin stood up. He announced their departure, leaving Chinai completely baffled. He did not get why they had to leave after all this effort. While clearing the area of monsters, Chin tried to make Wu Jin listen to reason. He argued they could easily grab points from orcs without causing any trouble. Chin realized it was only the beginning, so he started complaining. He whined about his low iron and hunger. Then, a skeleton stepped up. A cold blade pressed to his stomach instantly cured his complaints. The summon claimed to be an expert at curing iron deficiencies and was eager to help. If you slice open flesh with a steel blade, plenty of iron enters the body directly. Hearing that, Chin instantly felt cured and fell right back into line. With his role accepted, Wu Jin told him they needed to keep preparing. This situation absolutely infuriated Chin, but there was nothing he could do. Helplessness only fueled his rage as they moved away from other players. They eventually found a quiet, deserted spot where nobody could disturb them. Suddenly the quiet shattered, heavy trees crashed down with a crunch. Wu Jin was hacking them down with an axe, leaving Qin completely baffled. Since they got here, the guy had only been chopping wood instead of monsters. Day 2, it kicked off with a massive, surprise goblin ambush. The other players grouped up in the center to hold their ground together. They tore the beasts to shreds, and soon the third day arrived. It was the exact same routine, same ugly goblins, same tired players. Honestly, doubts quickly arose, since this was supposed to be a survival quest. It was too calm, boring even, suspiciously few monsters around. Yun Chang realized the group was growing too soft and needed to stay alert. They needed to scout the surrounding area, even if it meant taking risks. Meanwhile, Wu Jin received a notification that his level had finally gone up. Those days of constant grinding were finally paying off in a big way. His skeleton skills were upgraded, a well-deserved logical payoff. Right after, the young summoner announced it was time to head into a new area. Qin was baffled. Why leave? They had worked so hard yesterday. They had put so much effort into securing this territory, but Wu Jin disagreed. He explained that things had changed, and he was completely reworking their plan. With that, he pulled off his mask and approached a massive pile of dead goblins. Placing his hand on a corpse, he summoned his skeletal soldiers. Massive undead warriors rose before Wu Jin, leaving Qin absolutely speechless. Previously, Wu Jin could only call on 5 skeletons at a time. But his newly upgraded class allowed him to raise a literal undead army. When other test takers finally left their clearing, they froze in shock. They were greeted by giant piles of dead goblins littering the path. Trust me, the sheer scale of this slaughter was mind-blowing, raising endless questions. This was not a standard battle, it was a straight-up massacre. Who could possibly do this? Yun Chang assumed he already had the top players. But then one of his scouts ran back with some deeply troubling news. He led the group forward to check out the next area. What they uncovered in the next zone left Yun Chang completely speechless. A massive wooden maze stretched out before them, choked with monster corpses. They stared in absolute horror at the towering wooden walls stuffed with dead goblins. Stacked, this maze served as bait to lure monsters right into a trap. In the distance, some sections of the maze were completely clogged with dead bodies. Inside, the pathways were lined with sharp wooden spikes where the carcasses of goblins were skewered. It made total sense why the players looked so relaxed, despite this being a survival trial. While they rested, another group had done all the hard work. Jinnah believed it was totally against his style to use traps for hunting. But given their current situation, he did just that. Still, Wu Jin convinced him. They would never build these setups again. Skeletons made them totally obsolete. Their raw power had spiked immensely, and bulky mazes were useless. They could hunt monsters easily now. Jinnah secretly hoped he could finally show off his fighting skills. Hearing this, Wu Jin immediately drew his blade, ready to put him to the test. Jinnah activated his gear, manifesting heavy brass knuckles with long spikes over his fists. The heavy brawler was already pretty pumped up to tear the skeleton warrior apart right away, but after a bit, Jinnah begged to stop. He was completely out of breath and desperately needed to rest. He had spent the whole time chasing that damn skeleton, trying to land a single hit, but the sneaky summon kept running away, leaving him absolutely no chance. Wu Jin was a real bastard for designing skeletons with insane stamina. To make things worse, their battle styles were totally different. Jinnah rushed in head-on, wasting all his energy instantly. Meanwhile, Wu Jin struck from the blind spots while avoiding damage. It was a brutally effective style, as painful as it was to admit. Jinnah really wanted to master it. Wu Jin kept teasing him, but his intentions were already pretty clear. He was molding a reliable partner for the deadly battles ahead. Jinnah was still fuming, recalling his solo struggle against those ferocious wolves. Wu Jin knew the guy was incredibly tough, but he never actually used his proper moves. Nobody had ever trained him properly. He simply relied on his immortal body and recklessly threw himself headfirst into every single fight, but that mindless style was completely inefficient. With some time, Wu Jin would mold him into a highly competent partner. They were already on their 5th day inside the dungeon, and both had managed to increase their levels significantly. Jinnah instantly started whining for a rest day, claiming he worked way too hard. When he finally got some food, the big guy greedily devoured his meal, even offering some sweet treats to the summoned skeleton warriors. However, the Undead immediately carried the gift straight to Wu Jin instead. Jinna realized that they would never be true buddies since Wu Jin fully controlled the summons. For his own purposes, they probably would have kept bickering about food and insults for hours, but a sudden noise caught their attention. Wait for it. An unfamiliar echo cut through the air, silencing their petty arguments. Only a sliver of time remained on this survival quest. Perhaps this was a distress signal. Jinna knew they had already dealt with a massive number of beasts, but he had no clue how many remained. Wu Jin was absolutely sure that was no cry for help. Once they cleared this level, they would advance to the next, and now the system was likely gathering survivors, deciding the order to hunt down the needles, which completely caught Chinai off guard. This sudden twist of the players uniting and planning their hunt structure was totally unexpected. For the past 5 days, our guys let the other players take it pretty easy. Too comfortable, Jin decided to quickly check his golden catalog first. He wanted to review it before moving out, but as he browsed through, Chinai stared in utter confusion at the glowing golden pages Jin had actually unlocked. The legendary corpse explosion skill belonging to John Georg, the immortal king. Meanwhile, the players who survived 5 long days inside the dungeon finally gathered. Out in a clearing where Yun Chong stepped up to give a brief speech. He announced that now everyone was together, they must map out their next moves. Almost over, in just minutes, this survival quest would wrap up. Everyone would advance, and the Haiti Guild planned to lead the first wave. This aggressive move on the monsters came as no surprise to Chinai and Wu Jin. It only proved they were much safer sticking close to each other. With no objections raised, Yinshan issued a stern warning to stay back. Not disrupt their hunt. His crew all wore bright red ribbons. The guild leader made it clear that any troublemakers would be eliminated immediately. It was incredibly hostile. Still, that was reality. Chinai wanted to immediately fight back against this obvious injustice, but Wu Jin held him back. Yinshan's arrogant assistant immediately defended his boss. Chinai was completely ready to throw hands with this random punk right here. He tolerated zero disrespect. Wu Jin quickly stepped in to calm things. He quieted his hot-headed friend, knowing they could not afford a massive brawl. Apologizing politely, he dragged Chinai away and reminded him of there were too many strangers here, meaning they would face an entire army wearing those red ribbons. Chinai finally cooled down, but a dark and troubling realization quickly settled over him. They had zero shot at winning if these players easily cleared the needles. Soon they transitioned to Stage 2, facing a truly massive needle monster. The vanguard group of eager players quickly approached the monstrous, coiled snake. The beast was absolutely gargantuan, slithering through the forest like a freight train. Its massive forked tongue flicked menacingly, eyes gleaming with sheer homicidal rage. These poor rookies had no clue what they were actually walking into. Following Yinshan's loud order, they unleashed a barrage of explosive flares. A blinding detonation rocked the clearing, catching the beast in the epicenter. Chinai grew anxious, wondering why their own group was just standing around. If they kept waiting, the other guilds would steal all the glory. Yet Wu Jin remained completely unfazed, absolutely certain that would not happen. He calmly tried to explain his strategic reasoning to his panicked friend. Think about it, what is the immediate human reaction to a monster? Naturally, you throw everything you have to catch the beast off guard. And the explosions kept rocking the beast's head, making Chinai even more restless. Chinai wanted to jump in and start tearing the monster to shreds. He would have struck immediately to eliminate the target as fast as possible. But wait, if it was really that simple, why was this dungeon still completely undefeated? But if this was such a simple task, why had nobody cleared it yet? Maybe they just lacked numbers. For those who failed before, what was unfolding now would finally put that theory to the test. If the issue was pure manpower, then the Hades Guild group would crush this monster. But suddenly the battlefield completely shifts. The massive snake stops. Its self-destruction sprouts legs along its sides and bolts. The players see this as a win, thinking that if things keep going like this, they will corner it in no time. Everyone wants to be the first to slay this needle beast, but trust me, things are never that easy because, besides growing legs, the serpent also sprouts deadly needles all over its body. It retreats deeper into the dark woods, baiting its pursuers forward. The players assume the beast is just terrified and trying to hide. Chinai is still kicking himself, furious that he is missing out on the hunt. Meanwhile, Jin is certain his doubts are valid. This fight is far from finished. The beast has not even launched a real attack yet. And what are all those needles for anyway? Meanwhile, Yunchang keeps encouraging his guild members, urging them to keep pushing and target the beast's head. But in the blink of an eye, something incredibly bizarre happens. The massive serpent rears back to its full height, towering over the forest canopy, and rains down a flurry of sharp spines, but the players, determined, retaliate by firing off magic spells, arrows, and every skill they have. Then the serpent suddenly whips around and charges directly at them. The frontline tanks brace themselves, trying to block the charge with shields. They lob explosives right at the beast's head, hoping to stun it. The blast slows its momentum, halting the charge. The players peer forward, waiting for the dust to settle, but when it clears, a terrifying new form emerges. The beast's face is now covered in massive, razor-sharp needles pointed right at them. Yunchang instantly senses that something terrible is coming. He screams for everyone to stop and hold the line. Instantly, the creature unleashes a devastating rain of spikes, completely showering the warriors. The volley hits like a tidal wave, sweeping players off their feet in heaps. From a safe distance, Jin watches the absolute chaos and starts analyzing. He already suspected that those massive spikes were laced with deadly poison. They were definitely not just harmless thorns. Looking at this massive scale, he is probably pretty glad he sat this one out. The snake vanishes into thin air as the heavy smoke finally clears up. The survivors slowly pick themselves up. Yunchang shrugs it off as a basic ranged attack. Nothing too serious. He orders his men to group up and press the attack, but the guild members are moving pretty slowly now. One player examines a fallen needle, only to find it incredibly fragile as it crumbles into dust. It is deeply bizarre. The serpent retreats to safety after shedding its arsenal, which makes Yunchang believe the beast is now completely defenseless. He orders his team to strike hard before those spines can grow back. Eager players sprint after the serpent, obeying their ambitious leader, who is already counting his massive rewards in his head. The charge is in full swing, when a strange phenomenon suddenly begins. One after another, the warriors start losing. They collapsed at high speed, piling onto each other and coughing up thick pools of blood. Paralyzed, they lay frozen. It was clearly a massive poisoning, realizing that the snake's deadly needle spines carried an incredibly toxic venom that dealt devastating damage to them. Most of these hunters were completely combat ineffective now, and nobody had ever anticipated that those sharp spikes would be laced with lethal toxins. Very quickly, the horrifying truth hit. The snake's venom was fatal. Many of those fallen players would never rise again. This was a terrible situation, yet dodging it was completely impossible. There was no warning about needles. Chin watched, his blood boiling with fury. At the sight, he couldn't wrap his head around this sudden and tragic catastrophe. The giant snake's poison completely derailed their offense, forcing the remaining survivors to scramble back. Yet, even though the venom was lethal, it did not kill them instantly. The damaged hunters were left heavily weakened. This mass poisoning was no random accident, striking instead at a critical moment right when they launched their second charge. Chin was utterly lost, not knowing how to handle this incredibly desperate situation. But with the enemy's hidden trap revealed, it was finally their turn to counterattack. At this point, though, Chin had absolutely zero interest in facing that monstrous serpent. He stared in absolute disbelief as he saw Wu Jin rally his undead skeleton warriors, preparing to charge directly at the beast. He flatly told him that he was heading in alone anyway, and that Chin must remain behind to prepare. On one hand, Chin felt relieved to be spared from the combat, but on the other, his pride stung because he was taking commands from a virtual newcomer, yet again. Wu Jin didn't even bother arguing, simply offering to handle the deadly threat entirely himself. With that, Chin stopped grumbling and agreed to follow instructions. Meanwhile, the massive serpent began slithering rapidly away from the raid group, but Wu Jin had already caught up, quickly mapping out his offensive. Studying the toxic substance, he discovered that the venom was entirely odorless and colorless, explaining why the raid was caught off guard. Vanguard units collapsed rapidly because they sustained massive amounts of damage without even realizing they were being poisoned. Fortunately, Wu Jin was completely different from standard hunters. He possessed Apu's legendary power, protecting him from absolutely everything. On top of that, his specialized poison blood skill was completely and utterly buffed when he activated that ancient power. making this the absolute perfect counter to the giant snake. Surveying his options, the young warrior reached for a spear. He reasoned that a giant spike-covered serpent would have scales far too thick for simple arrows to ever hope to penetrate. Meanwhile, a heavily exhausted warrior from the Haiti Guild could barely stand on his feet. His torment wasn't just physical, his spirit was completely broken. He felt an incredibly heavy wave of guilt, knowing he had let his guard down at the worst possible time. Aside from those who perished from the venom, several others had scattered in panic, desperate to outrun the deadly cloud, while some were likely still breathing somewhere. Yun Chang had no intention of searching for them. Instead, he commanded his remaining troops to hold position and regroup, assuming the missing were already dead. However, idling there was a certain death sentence, since they lacked the numbers for another strike. Even under these desperate conditions, Yun Chang refused to go looking for the scattered members. Terrified of suffering even more casualties, he chose to quickly reorganize his broken squad and push for another desperate strike against the massive beast. He privately admitted he had lost all faith in victory, yet retreating meant death. Retreating meant certain death, leaving the surviving hunters trapped in a hopeless nightmare. It was hard accepting they had to leave their friends behind, especially since some of them might still be breathing, but Yun Chun absolutely refused a rescue mission. He knew a blind counterattack would only lead to another defeat, leaving him with no choice but to stay calm and keep a cool head. Then a sharp, cold hiss echoed through the trees. The soldiers froze, hearts hammering in pure terror. Another encounter with a deadly needle snake would easily finish them off. Desperate, the scout scrambled up a tree to locate the beast, but what he saw up there left the scout completely and utterly speechless. He could barely make sense of the sight, let alone explain it. Right there, the terrifying needle snake was locked in a brutal battle with another player. It seemed impossible, yet this fighter was breathing perfectly fine near the toxic beast. Shocked, Yun Chun quickly climbed up to see this miracle himself. He could not comprehend how this mysterious warrior was ignoring the lethal venom, wondering if the poison had somehow thinned out, though that seemed impossible. Realizing the opportunity, Yun Chun barked out immediate orders. They had to move toward the snake's nest. Surviving allies might still be trapped there. This was their golden chance, he shouted to his men to fix their earlier blunders, save their comrades, and slay the needle snake. Meanwhile, the beast raged against the intruder in its domain. But this intruder was commanding a small army of skeleton warriors. Wu Jin knew normal arrows could never pierce that armored hide, so he planned something smarter. He would beat the beast at its own game with poison, while the monster was completely distracted, clawing frantically at the relentless skeletons. Wu Jin slipped behind it. This was his chance for a close-range strike. Closing the gap instantly, he lunged forward and drove a poison spear deep into the beast, where spikes used to be. Open pores lined its flesh. By forcing the toxin straight into those exposed openings, it would hit the bloodstream instantly, rotting the beast from within. That was when Wu Jin realized the monster had played dead earlier, just to bait the other players in. They fell right into the trap. The needle snake was far smarter than they expected, shedding its minor spikes on purpose to expose those open holes. That was how it unleashed the hidden, deadly cloud of toxic gas that wiped everyone out. But now the tables had turned. The needle snake was finally getting a taste of its own venomous medicine. While the boss suffered, Chin A was busy piling up dead goblins nearby, grumbling that Wu Jin got all the action while he did manual labor. Seriously, who wants to stack corpses? Talk about wasting a talent like him. It was a total tragedy. Then his skeleton companion cut him off, demanding an immediate status report. This annoyed Chin A to no end. He really did not expect Wu Jin to get back this quickly. Still, Chin A reported that everything was ready, though he doubted the needle snake would take the bait and slither over here. Once the setup was done, Wu Jin coordinated with his summon, delivering a barrage of swift cuts all over the beast. With the wounds open, the skeleton warrior grabbed the heavily poisoned spears and took off at a full sprint. The undead warrior rushed straight toward the There it was, the needle snake was thrashing wildly in the distance. It writhed and shrieked in absolute agony as the poison melted its colossal body. Wu Jin's skeleton warrior stabbed another poisoned spear into the flesh before slipping away. Wu Jin wanted this beast to look like a pincushion, burying it under endless attacks. Poison spears rained down constantly, its toxicity levels skyrocketed instantly. Its health bar plummeted. This was exactly what the skeleton wanted. Though slow to affect this massive monster, the skeleton stabbed it again. He deliberately landed a venomous blow right where the snake could see him. Overwhelmed by the spreading lethal toxins, the boss monster finally turned to flee. It desperately scrambled to find a safe haven where it could heal up. Game over, a pile of dead goblins suddenly blocked its path. Wujin immediately triggered his corpse explosion skill the moment the snake closed in. As soon as the giant scales slid over the bodies, the trap was sprung. A massive blast rocked the cavern, tearing right into the thrashing beast. It panicked completely. The giant beast veered away, desperate for safety. Too bad for the snake, because another heap of goblin corpses was waiting. Wujin detonated the second pile, blasting the monster with another devastating chain reaction. Breaking news, the media was flooded with reports of the Phoenix Guild. They wiped out in a level 4 dungeon, and Si-chan was absolutely thrilled. This disaster crushed Park Yongwan's elite forces, so Si-chan ordered his assistant to prepare. He wanted a getaway car parked right at the entrance of the Needle Dungeon. Si-chan was highly confident because he had poured a fortune into Wujin's growth. He even bought them a cover identity inside a powerful Russian guild. To make it look authentic, he even supplied a beat-up Russian junk car. His assistant smiled, confirming the getaway ride was already set up. Once they cleared the dungeon, they would need to dodge greedy journalists immediately. Back in the dungeon, the needle snake's absolute nightmare continued. Explosions fired constantly. The beast had absolutely nowhere to run. Jinnah watched in total shock, realizing Wujin had calculated everything. He did not just predict its panic, he knew exactly where it would run. Boom, he detonated the corpses, forcing the beast into a tight corner. Watching this flawless tactical strategy play out was nothing short of mind-blowing. A heavily smoking snake crawled straight into another line of skeleton warriors. Panicked and heavily poisoned, the colossal beast realized there was no escape left. It knew the giant snake realized its end was finally here. The relentless skeletons kept firing a rain of poison arrows at their target. Every single shot hit home, leaving the dying monster thrashing on the ground. Screams of agony filled the air. Dodging was completely impossible now. The lethal venom had completely taken over, and its health was draining away rapidly. Meanwhile, survivors from the other guilds finally managed to catch up to the battlefield. They arrived just in time to hear the agonizing cries of the dying monster. Those deafening, painful screeches echoed through the cavern, drawing every remaining hunter closer. Only one burning question remained: who was fighting this legendary boss completely alone? Defeated, a glowing system notification confirmed the beast was finally dead. A wave of relief washed over them, knowing they could finally escape this living hell. Alive, they even hoped to sneak in and snatch the dead snake's skin, a real stroke of luck. Only Yun Chang was dissatisfied with how things turned out. He couldn't believe that someone had actually killed the giant needle snake. His men ran quickly to escape the dungeon, but Yun Chang decided that he couldn't return empty-handed. More than anything, he had to see the face of the mysterious player who won. Soon, a system notification arrived that the first needle snake hunter had appeared on Earth. His rank rose along with all of his abilities. Wujin had earned his victory. After that, the young man wanted to extract the yellow dragon's magic pearl from the dead snakes body. It was a tedious task, but well worth the effort. The surviving players rushed to claim their share of the trophies when a massive, unfamiliar player suddenly blocked their path. The giant stranger pretended not to know Korean, simply gesturing for the group to turn back. Yun Chang tried to explain that they only wanted to look at the dead snake, but soon all negotiations ended as several massive, fully armed skeleton warriors summoned around the giant stranger. Yun Chang quickly analyzed the situation and realized that the skeleton warriors were completely immune to poison gas, which is why they were so effective against the needle snake. But an attack that had failed an entire elite guild couldn't be won by a few skeletal soldiers alone. Something was clearly off here. He still needed to examine the corpse of the snake to confirm his suspicions. Suddenly, the shadow of a massive needle skeleton rose in the distance. The situation became completely mysterious. He realized that someone was actively trying right then to summon the needle snake. Just like any other skeleton warrior, the young man lunged forward to catch a glimpse of the summoner's face, but no Shanana caught him in midair and slammed him down, warning that he had already warned him. Now, Yun Chang was eating dirt on the ground, utterly humiliated. He couldn't grasp why the stranger was so stubborn. Finally, he ordered his companions to memorize the summoner's face and flee the dungeon as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Wu Jin refused to give up on taming the monster's skeleton. Look at that, a glowing dragon pearl was hidden deep inside its body. However, trying to summon such a massive skeleton failed because he still lacked the required skills. His current level was not high enough to absorb something so powerful. Still, the yellow dragon's pearl was a massive prize that left him satisfied. Outside, a restless crowd was waiting near the dungeon entrance. They had been waiting a full week without hearing a single word about the clearing of the Needle Snake dungeon. From the beginning, absolutely nobody expected this raid to succeed. Everyone just wanted it over with so they could pack up and go home. But right at that exact second, the unthinkable happened. People came scrambling out of their vehicles as a massive system alert announced the dungeon was officially cleared. All the eager journalists, reporters, and guild managers immediately sprang to life. News anchors frantically looked for the Hay Guild's backup squad. Inside, Yun Chang screamed at his men to stop the Russians, yelling that they were the ones who cleared the dungeon. At that moment, 2 Russian hunters were indeed. They quietly make their way through the massive crowd, keeping their heads down. They ignore the loud reporters, refusing to answer any personal questions. No comments. Officers push the frantic press away, helping the Russians escape. Their getaway car immediately speeds off, vanishing into the busy streets. Safe inside, the team finally lets out a sigh of relief. Ken takes off his mask and asks about the yellow dragon magic sphere, but Wu Jin stays completely silent, keeping his cards close to his chest. Instead, he calls their broker, who offers warm congratulations on a successful mission. Soon, every major news station is broadcasting the clearing of the dungeon and praising the mysterious hero, Isaac Ivanov. The broker suggests that Wu Jin keep using this powerful alias for all of his future high-stakes deals. Wu Jin had already planned on doing exactly that, so he readily agrees to continue. Then the broker mentions that while they were busy inside, something very strange went down with Bodyguard Park. Jin Jaime led them into a level 4 dungeon and not a single soul made it out alive. While that brutal difficulty makes wipeouts common, there is a dark twist here. The broker discovered a hidden spy from the Skull Guild, heavily backed by the Yamato faction, was among the dead. The Skull Guild tracked some bank records and found something highly suspicious. Wu Jin does not see why he is sharing any of this, but the broker confesses he knows their line is actively being tapped and that he has some massive secrets of his own. Soon, Wu Jin pulls over the car they are riding in and tells Chin to get out and disappear for now. Chin quickly hops into Wu Jin's secret yellow sedan. At first, Chin is furious about being dumped like this, but Wu Jin warns him not to make a scene and check the glove compartment instead. The highly prepared Wu Jin had placed a little surprise inside just for him. He stashed a fresh supply of food alongside a burner phone, showing that the full payment has already cleared. The following morning, media outlets are still buzzing about the cleared dungeon and the mysterious player, Isaac Ivanov. Yunin gives a major exclusive interview as a sole survivor of the deadly raid. Secretary Li points out that the public's fascination has quickly turned to bitter outrage, thanks to everything Yunin revealed. The broker immediately hands the secretary a critical task that must hit the presses right now. Massive front-page headlines soon declare that the legendary Isaac Ivanov has always deeply admired the Messiah Guild. He claims he looks up to Lai Jun and wants to help them achieve the impossible. This shocking statement completely flips public opinion overnight. Now, the top guild cannot ignore him anymore. They are forced to make a move to recruit Wu Jin, or at least keep him friendly. Manipulating the masses worked like a charm. Checking over his gear, Wu Jin decides he needs to prepare much harder before their representatives reach out to him. Suddenly, another massive headline drops announcing that Park Yeon just conquered a level 6 dungeon. It is a massive historic achievement. Every major news network in the world is desperately begging for an interview, but during his live press conference, Secretary Kim interrupts with urgent news, revealing that Jin Jaime's elite force was entirely wiped out inside their targeted dungeon. Park Yunwan immediately ended the press conference and left the station. They promised to release an official statement in just a few hours. Meanwhile, Park Yunwan was scheduled for an urgent hospital medical exam. In the car, Secretary Kim reported some highly confidential informant news. An anonymous source had sent a detailed bank statement to the office. Why they did it remains unknown, but the details seemed perfectly accurate. The official investigation report revealed that most of those team members died. They died from stab wounds, meaning they were not killed by monsters. Since the team went in alone, it was clearly an inside job. Mole was hiding among Park Yunwan's personal guards. Talk about an absolute shocker. Hearing this, the Messiah Guild called an urgent, extraordinary meeting. The main agenda was deciding what to do with Park Yunwan. They had to act, but Park Shinhai felt they were lagging behind. Everyone was too slow. Suddenly, the Master Archer spoke up. He revealed he was currently working with the Skull Guild for answers. Park Shinhai was absolutely furious. She could not believe his recklessness. She warned that acting rashly, without knowing the facts, was pure suicide. They needed to uncover the truth about that lizard warrior dungeon first. Time was running out. Kim Jun's empty seat meant he was dead. In this mess, they could never let the world see their connection. Their ties to the Skull Guild had to stay hidden. Then Yang Xiu interrupted. He refused to ignore this. Sure, Kim Jun was weak, but still. This was insulting. They had to cut off the Skull Guild completely. This was a direct order from the guild leader himself, no debate. Master Archer scoffed, unwilling to take orders with their leader absent. But Park Shinhai made it clear that the decision was final. The boss had officially banned all future cooperation with the Skulls. With that, both Master Archer and Swordsman had to back down. They hated being ordered around. The disrespectful tone left them incredibly bitter. Sick of the ingratitude, they wondered if it was time to leave the Messiah Guild. Meanwhile, Kim Yujin met with Park Yunwan in his private office. The young man acted shocked that Jin Hyomi's elite team was dead. Park Yunwan admitted he originally teamed up with them for profit. But things had changed. Now he simply wanted to destroy them. And let me tell you, Park Yunwan was absolutely seeing red. Within a few years, he planned to establish a massive trade network. He would sell rare items to Japan, securing absolute wealth and power. Call him a traitor, but Park Yunwan was just playing defensively. He was terrified the Messiah Guild would eventually strip him of everything. Recalling his past life memories, Kim Yujin offered to be his bodyguard. The guy knew he was being used to destroy the Skull Guild. But he needed to secure his position, so he would not get discarded. Park Yunwan quietly pondered the offer. He never expected this move. He had actually planned to win Kim Yujin over eventually anyway. But now, the legendary elite player was offering his services on a silver platter. Destroy the Skull Guild in exchange for protection. Eugene confirmed that he indeed needed backup and had his own personal score to settle with them. As Park Yunwan's bodyguard, Eugene could now act on his own. Discretion, leaving his boss to take all the heat. Absolutely perfect. Next up, Eugene headed straight into the offices of a game developer. There, they informed him that his contract terms were getting a major upgrade. Right to the top tier, our guy thanked them politely for the promotion. He hoped to remain under their supervision, but his manager was completely baffled. How did Eugene become Park Yunwan's chief bodyguard when he had only entered the game 6 months ago? A solid reputation alone never guaranteed that rank. Clearly, some hidden connection was at play that management knew nothing about. Meanwhile, in the elevator, Eugene listened quietly to some staff gossiping. They were complaining, putting all the blame onto the highly paid bodyguards. They claimed the guards were secretly pocketing rare items, all while ordinary workers had to risk their lives for ungrateful rich folks. Ignoring their whining, Eugene wrapped up his meetings and moved to his next play. His broker Likin was thrilled to get a personal call from Isaac Ivanov. He likely wanted a new gig. Instead, Eugene was hunting for fake documents. Likin, relaxing in his chair, wondered what this crazy jerk wanted now. Why couldn't he just take a brief break? Still, the broker pointed out that manipulating the powerful people running the Target Guild was no easy feat, especially those managing the dungeons, yet he still agreed to do it. He would deliver. Likin figured Eugene wanted the fake documents to infiltrate a dungeon, and things were about to get extremely wild very soon. Meanwhile, Chang couldn't understand why Likin kept helping this complete lunatic. He was doing it without knowing the details or why he trusted him. Chang claimed he never trusted anyone, but he wanted to figure out exactly where Eugene was heading to determine whose side he was truly on. Only his final goal would reveal the truth. Meanwhile, a white SUV sped. Inside the vehicle, some very intense negotiations were happening. They knew that Eugene was actively planning to crush the Skull Guild. After recent events, Park Yunwon was completely set on starting an all-out war against them. Conveniently, most of their elite members were entering the dungeon today, presenting Eugene and Park Yunwon with a perfect strike window. Still, they could not rule out Eugene building his own secret squad with those fake documents. Honestly, that did not matter as long as Eugene entered the gates safely. Later that evening, Incheon Island was peaceful and quiet. Eugene arrived to register for the raid, introducing himself under a fake identity as Lee Jong-hun. Records showed he had arrived completely alone. Paperwork done, he got the dungeon sheet. He had to enter a dangerous dungeon that capped at 61 players, meaning they had to slay a massive two-headed dog. Sitting inside his car, he studied the raid rules and realized this entire setup was an obvious trap. Right on cue, several vehicles pulled up, unloading heavily armed warriors. Among them was an absolute giant of a man, and Eugene immediately noticed. They expected to meet experienced players, but was it actually Yang Jaihu himself? The broker scanned the list of registered players, utterly shocked to spot his name. Even the secretary double-checked, convinced he had slipped into the group using a fake alias. He went by the name Chong Wung-heek, a disguise that did not fool the broker for a second. This guy was bad news, a true powerhouse from the legendary Knights of the Round Table. With a knight in play, it was clear Kim Yujin likely would not survive. It really was Yang Jaihu. Kim Yujin never expected the Messiah Guild to send their enforcers so quickly. He did not expect them to move so fast, especially since he was dealing with an elite enforcer. Anyone who possessed the legendary relics of King Arthur, as well as those under their direct command, belonged to the Knights. But over the years, the weakened Knights had quietly aligned themselves with the Messiah Guild. It was a cold, calculated transaction, and everything was going exactly as planned. They needed these weakened Knights to fall directly under the influence of the King of Deadly Poison. Which brings us to Yang Jaihu, who carried a highly coveted ancient stone necklace. He likely stole it from another knight, a legendary artifact with a terrifying reputation. Whoever wore it gained a massive skill boost, unleashing their raw, unbridled power. Kim Yujin used his Stone of Mastery to reinforce his skeleton before stepping into the dungeon. The moment they entered, a system alert flashed. They had to slaughter 3,000 monsters. Only by clearing this massive horde of beasts could they advance to the next floor. It was incredibly tedious work, since most players preferred fighting a few elite bosses. None of them wanted to waste precious time grinding through endless waves of monotonous weaklings. While the task was not deadly, it would certainly drag on forever. And in the middle of all that chaotic grinding, a betrayal would easily blend in. Slitting the throat of Kim Yujin and calling it an accident would be effortless. There was zero time to waste. They had to hunt down their target immediately. Suddenly, one scout pointed out a group from the Skulls Guild. They boldly strutted into the dungeon, behaving as if they had no idea what kind of danger they were in. Failing to read the room, the idiots simply kept making a complete mess of things. They had likely been warned to stay away, but chose to show up anyway. Their absolute stupidity signed their death warrants. The captain decided to eliminate them later. For now, they had to ignore the loud fools and focus on their primary mission. No matter what else went down in this place, they had to handle Kim Yujin themselves. The orders were clear: find the target, then immediately report back to the captain. With Kim Yujin wielding lethal blood poison, a single mistake would be their last. If anyone tried to interfere with the hit, they had permission to slaughter them. Yang Jaihu took full responsibility for the hits himself. Dashing through the trees, the scout realized things were spiraling out of control. He had not planned to fight so soon, but Kim Yujin was a total wildcard. Slipping behind a thick trunk, the player paused to catch his breath and think. He desperately wanted to know if the personal guards of Park Yangwan had entered. Suddenly, the warrior froze as his eyes widened in horror. Elite soldiers and ruthless warriors were systematically hacking the Skulls Guild to bloody shreds. He scanned the carnage for Kim Yujin, desperately trying to fulfill the orders of his captain. Sensing a sudden presence, he reached for his hilt, but he was already too late. Kim Yujin materialized out of the shadows, instantly slashing his chest open. He claimed innocence, but Kim Yujin only smiled coldly. He looks up, a heavily bleeding stranger is hanging from the top of a tree. The stranger insists that he has absolutely no ties to the Skull Guild. But Kim Yujin uses the Eye of Anubis, discovering that the stranger received orders directly from Jian to stay completely out of the fight and survive. He was supposed to report back to his leader. Still, the spy keeps lying, swearing up and down he has no ties to the Skull Guild. But he is a traitor, and Kim Yujin handles traitors fast. The man's last words are pure lies, claiming innocence until the very end, but Kim Yujin knows you can only trust snakes like him once they are dead. Meanwhile, the broker keeps arguing with his contact, claiming they are just jealous of Kim Yujin, the associate. Already regrets asking for details, admitting to the broker that he thinks Kim Yujin is incredibly cunning, never jumping into an unfair battle. If there is no path to victory, he simply will not fight. This smart young man is thoroughly satisfied with the performance of his skeleton warriors. He has a brutal mission coming up, with absolutely no guarantee of survival. He must use his head and play dirty to survive. Soon, evening falls, and the players settle in to rest and plan out their strategy for tomorrow. Sitting in small groups, they go over the plan. Meanwhile, the mercenary team hired by the Messiah Guild is frustrated that they still haven't captured Kim Yujin, especially after hearing he can summon skeleton warriors. They know his summons do all the heavy lifting. The captain speaks up, making it clear they know exactly how to handle that coward once found. But he is also highly concerned about where the Skull Guild is hiding. With everything so uncertain, they need to regroup with them as soon as possible. By early the next morning, the players are actively hunting for Kim Yujin. They are completely baffled that they haven't run into him yet. Is he actually planning to hide until the entire dungeon is cleared? Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the area, sending everyone running into the clearing, only to find themselves completely surrounded by skeleton warriors. They realize this means Kim Yujin is right around the corner. After all, his loyal summons are already waiting for them, and they do not have to wait long. Kim Yujin finally steps out. His rival, Yang Jaihu, is absolutely thrilled to finally get a real fight. He is tired of searching. Right then, a skeleton lunges at the giant. This massive brute is incredibly strong, but his real weapon is his speed. Despite his size, he has insane reflexes, dodging attacks with ease. But the skeleton warriors hold their ground, showing surprising agility. They dodge his heavy strikes, catching him completely off guard. Now it is Kim Yujin's turn to clash blades directly with his powerful foe. The guy is not just incredibly strong, he is extremely fast too. Kim Yujin unleashes a flurry of strikes, but they barely leave a scratch. He has waited so long for this showdown, and it is already turning into complete chaos. The giant rushes forward, instantly seizing the upper hand. It is clear to everyone that Kim Yujin is facing a true monster. This enemy is nothing like the weaklings he fought before. Playing it safe and staying calm against this guy was simply impossible. Suddenly, both players received a system alert from their powerful patrons. Their sponsors were watching, meaning the final reward would be absolutely massive. Recognizing the stakes, Jin realized he couldn't keep fighting like this. Continuing like this meant winning would be next to impossible. He needed to stop relying on brute force and start using his head. Looking around, he summoned a massive horde of skeleton warriors as backup. It was clear Jin was finally getting serious about ending this clash. He launched a series of strikes, but his physical attacks barely made a scratch. The arrogant bully just laughed, mockingly swatting the skeletons aside like flies. They were shattered left and right, leaving the giant completely alone with Jin. Strangely, all the undead warriors had suddenly vanished from the battlefield. But while the crowd watched their duel, Jin's summons had targeted someone else. The skeletons had ambushed the rest of the bully's squad, triggering pure panic. The teammates desperately cried out to Jaiwu, overwhelmed by the endless bony horde. Now Jaiwu faced a choice: abandon his duel or let his team die. Leave them to be torn apart or save them. The dilemma absolutely enraged him. Roaring that Jin had crossed the wrong person, he unleashed his trump card. He activated Gawain's necklace, triggering the legendary blessing of the sun. Instantly, Jaiwu's strength and speed skyrocketed to an entirely different level. Defeating this buffed monster now seemed completely impossible to everyone. Yet the cunning Jin actually looked pleased that his opponent had played this card. Once more, the skeleton warriors swarmed the giant from every direction. Though they dealt minor damage, they kept the golden giant busy. He easily smashed them to pieces with his massive blade, just as Jin expected. Jin knew that legendary accessory belonged to the Knights of the Round Table. Its devastating sun power was formidable, but the setup was officially complete. With the sun blessing active, it was finally time for the next phase. Jin quickly ordered his skeleton warriors to pull back. They retreated instantly, leaving the other players utterly confused. Jin himself turned tail and bolted, driving the giant into a mindless rage. There was no way he would let this slippery kid escape his wrath. He ordered his team to handle the remaining skeletons while he gave chase. Jaiwu bolted after him as Jin sprinted deeper into the dungeon. Running ahead, Jin smirked at how easily his opponent abandoned his teammates. That extreme overconfidence in his own power would soon be his downfall. Even Gawain's legendary necklace wouldn't save him from what was coming. Sure, the artifact significantly boosted his stats, but he was too stupid. This brainless brute had no idea how to actually use it. In his hands, it was essentially useless. Still, Jaiwu kept pursuing him. The giant roared, promising to crush Jin the moment he caught him. With the sun's blessing active, escaping his sheer speed was completely impossible. That is, until the giant stepped right onto a massive pile of dead goblins. Instantly, Jin triggered his ultimate skill, Corpse Explosion. A devastating blast ripped through the dungeon, swallowing the arrogant giant whole. Terrified, the players still refused to believe a simple blast could defeat their commander. Their immediate mission: obliterate these skeleton warriors and regroup. They want to clear the warriors fast and join him, but everything changes. Toxic, burning blood splashes everywhere, catching them completely off guard. These undead summons are no joke, they excel at stalling. As the dust settles, Ju stands completely unscathed, roaring for a duel. He demands a duel, but Jin just ignores him, continuing his relentless teasing. Calling him a slow coward, Jin dares the brute to chase after him if he can. First step, Jin sneers, learn to run faster. That completely snaps Ju's patience. In a blind rage, he vows to tear Jin apart with his bare hands. Activating his rush skill, he charges ahead like a runaway train. He quickly catches up, swinging his massive sword to cleave Jin in half. But then the earth collapses, sending Ju plummeting down. He fell straight into a classic trap designed for dungeon monsters. To make matters worse, the bottom is already packed with dead monster corpses. The bodies detonate violently, trapping the falling player in a massive explosion. Once the blinding smoke finally clears, Jin calmly steps out of his hiding spot. Standing right at the edge of the pit, he resumes mocking his helpless, battered opponent. He laughs at Ju for playing tag instead of using actual strategy. True battle strategy must target the enemy's biggest weaknesses and cover every possible scenario. A hot-headed leader who relies solely on raw power ultimately brings nothing but ruin and painful death to his comrades. Suddenly, brutal memories of his past life flash through Ju's mind. Years ago, he was a legendary killer, the sole survivor of a massive, bloody clash. Surrounded by beasts, a teammate tried to speak, but Ju cut them off. He threatened to kill everyone himself, completely unbothered by their deaths. The player felt absolutely no remorse, treating his subordinates like completely disposable shield fodder. Unsurprising, the man has a brain made of cold, unfeeling muscle. Worse, he camped in an extremely dangerous zone despite receiving clear warnings. In a fit of fury, Ju lunged at his critic, but the man easily used a swift martial art to pin Ju to the dirt. He told Ju that useless leaders like him only doom their friends. Struggling to his feet, Ju realizes Jin's slick tactics feel eerily familiar. The movements match Suzuki's legendary techniques, but that doesn't save them now. Determined to kill everyone, Ju rushes forward, but Jin calmly announces that time is up. Jin explains that he never actually needed to shout verbal orders to his skeleton army. He only shouted the retreat command, so Ju would hear it and grow arrogant. The fake order was a trap, specifically designed to lure the brute right to this spot. After all, the powerful blessing of the sun is finally running out of steam. Ju is stunned. How does this kid know his exact abilities? Jin just smirks, enjoying the absolute panic on his face. Teasing him further, Jin asks if he should finally confess who he really is. And right on cue, the protective blessing of the sun completely disappears. With his magic gone, the helpless bully realizes he has been played like a fool. Behind Jin, the skeleton warriors stand victorious, having slaughtered all of Jiu's players. Jiu was completely blind. He focused only on chasing the young hunter down. Too late, they were just running in circles, leaving his allies wide open. The skeleton warriors slaughtered them all. Now, they rushed back to reinforce Wujin. Too late, the brute realized his entire squad was completely wiped out. Blind rage consumed him. He refused to accept this pathetic, humiliating defeat. With a roar, Jiu leaped high out of the trap to face Wujin. But standing beside the boy were massive, highly trained skeleton warriors. An unbreakable wall, they stood ready to protect their master. Meanwhile, late at night, Chinai was driving and grumbling about his shift. He hated losing his free time just to run an errand on Jiu. The broker Si-chan wanted him to check the two-headed dog dungeon. Si-chan would feel much better with Chinai keeping watch on the scene. The broker reassured him that he wasn't worried about Wujin, just cautious. He wanted to confirm key details before planning his next strategic move. After all, Wujin was clever and would eventually investigate Si-chan's goals. So Si-chan created the fake name Isaac Ivanov to manipulate the Skull Guild. It was all part of a massive play to systematically eliminate them. It was crucial that his plans perfectly aligned with Wujin's own goals. Back in the dungeon, everything was calm, but death was already unfolding. Jiu felt it. The toxic, poisoned blood was rapidly slowing him down. The sheer number of skeleton warriors was proving to be a nightmare. Surprisingly, these undead monsters fought with flawless, veteran martial precision. They wielded their weapons like masters, matching his speed step for step. Their reflexes and lethal strikes completely caught the swift giant off guard. Desperate, Jiu unleashed his final strength, shattering a skeleton with his sword. But the poison kept spreading, eating away at him from the inside. His legs buckled completely, and the massive warrior could no longer stand. He had survived against 12 skeletons, but only 2 remained. Things would have been much worse had Wujin not upgraded his summons. With the poison fully paralyzing Jiu, Wujin was done playing around. The young necromancer stepped forward, knowing the giant was completely finished. The lethal toxin was quickly shutting down his colossal heart. Yet Jiu glared at his killer with pure, burning hatred until the end. With a final gasp, the giant collapsed dead onto the stone floor. With the battle won, Wujin's skill levels surged instantly. He also claimed a rare trophy, the legendary Guan's necklace. It held the blessing of the sun, usable only once per day. This was his first artifact from the Knights of the Round Table. Wujin approached the cold corpse and activated the forbidden eye of Anubis. He plunged deep into the dead giant's memories, searching for secrets. He saw a secret meeting held right before the dungeon raid began. An angry Jiu was promising to tear his business partner to shreds. And that shady business partner was none other than Park Yongwan. In the next memory, Jiu was being welcomed as their newest ally. It was Lee Si-jun himself. He knew exactly what the Messiah Guild wanted. Not simply overlook the murder of their own guild member, but Yujin was ready to destroy everyone backing Lee Si-jun, completely ignoring justice, the bodies of dead goblins lay scattered across the bare ground. Other players set up an ambush in the bushes, waiting for the two-headed dog that, according to their plan, was supposed to take the bait they prepared. One of the players eagerly suggested that once the two-headed dog started to eat, they would all instantly pounce on it. But suddenly, the game announcer declared that the two-headed dog had already been slain. True to form, Yujin slipped away right after the raid. Concluded, near his car, he was stopped by China, who was holding a heavy of files. China told his partner that he really needed to give him something and discuss plans. The broker wanted them to enter another dungeon. Together, right after, China asked the hunter how things were going with Jiu. Talk about a setup. Yujin realized the broker knew he would be in this specific dungeon, yet he still chose to send him in anyway. China kept probing about Jiu and his combat style, pointing out that he was arguably the strongest around, and nobody really knew what secret skills China possessed. Yujin noted that his rival, facing 12 skeleton warriors, had defeated 10 of them single-handedly, so if there were still questions lingering about his true power, he could summon some skeletons to prove it. Files in the folder detailed the Horned Fox dungeon. 12 failed attempts to conquer it had already failed. China explained that he had to go back in under the guise of Isaac Ivanov. Yujin quietly took in the briefing, accepted every single condition, and agreed to Join the raid on the Horned Fox dungeon. Then, he said. Goodbye, but both remained locked in their own private thoughts. China assured the broker that Yujin had indeed accepted the offer to clear the Horned Fox dungeon. Broker knew there was no turning back if he truly wanted to. Pose the Messiah Guild, he had to place his trust in Yujin, son. Knew that if the Messiah Guild was not stopped in the next few years, and you just know they would ruthlessly turn their fangs against every other player. Yujin understood this perfectly, now recalling his clearing of the Horned Fox dungeon in his previous life, right after conquering the Horned Fox dungeon. He met Shinhai. She was highly impressed by his skills and invited him to join the Messiah Guild. Yujin replied that he would accept if the guild master made the offer to him. Personally, the master himself stepped out of his car, stating they needed his strength to save the world. He offered to form an alliance and extended his hand in alliance, but Yujin's trip down memory lane was cut short by a ping from the broker, confirming his candidacy for the Horned Fox dungeon. While asking him to test his skills first, it was a rather unusual request. Coming from the broker, still, the young man immediately prepared to start. Doing so, a brutal battle lay ahead, likely involving members of the Messiah Guild out for revenge over Jiu, meaning he had to show his abilities to the highest standard. This time, he was going to activate the Needle Snake Skin. Of course, it would drain a massive amount of his energy. Over the next couple of days, the young man knew exactly what he would encounter. In the Horned Fox dungeon, soon the big day arrived and all the participants were invited to the site. The two Russians stepped out, ready to take on the world, including the Horned Fox, and headed in. Chin believed he was the sole hero who conquered the Needle's dungeon, while everyone else thought it was impossible. Today, he was going to show off his superior skills once again. The game began, putting the participants right in a freezing winter forest. It was bitterly cold, forcing the players to immediately change into heavy winter gear. It was especially tough on mages and priests with low health stats. If they did not bundle up and look after themselves, they would only end up dragging down their teammates instead of helping them. Yujin completely agreed with her because he knew harsh weather could be far more terrifying than actual monsters. Chin could barely stand from the shivering cold when suddenly Yujin ordered them to move, dragging them away from the other players. This was actually a smart move. At least it gave them a chance to warm up. Chin still figured staying with the guild was safer, since acting alone in this freeze was incredibly difficult. Yujin asked if his companion could even use his powers in the cold. Chin immediately argued that freezing weather was actually his favorite environment, boasting that his brown bear nickname made this climate perfect for him. Perfect, Yujin remarked, because this Horned Fox dungeon was going to be way tougher than the Needle's dungeon. This news did not please Chin at all. Honestly, who can blame him for wanting out? Yujin put on his Grim Reaper mask to connect with his summoned creatures. He also wore an enchanted necklace that kept him warm. Finally, it was time to start the mission. Chin wanted to know when he would get fed and was curious about their plan, because if they had to build another fortress like last time he was out, survival tasks were just not his thing. Fortunately, there was no need for any construction work this time, and they would not have to do any heavy lifting. Yujin summoned skeleton warriors who also looked surprisingly well insulated. He figured his companion would feel much safer with these warm soldiers walking alongside him in the brutal cold. Chin realized Yujin had not just made random winter gear for them. They were crafted from the Needle dungeon skins. Last time they both worked hard, but Yujin kept all the valuable leather, making even one suit of this armor cost a fortune. Now his entire undead squad was wearing them. Talk about flexing. Meanwhile, back at the main camp, the missing Russian players were finally noticed. The leading girl asked the other players if they saw where Isaac Ivanov and his partner went. The players just made excuses, claiming they were too busy setting up the camp to notice the Russians. This made her extremely anxious, because her mission was not just to clear the dungeon but also to evaluate if an alliance with this mysterious Russian Isaac Ivanov was worth pursuing. She decided to track down the foreigners herself, leaving the rest of the team to finish the camp defense. Sending normal scouts was out of the question, since she wanted to personally verify. The Russian team showed true professionalism. By now, the local wolves had already caught the scent of human prey and lunged. They launched a brutal, sudden attack. But the summoned skeleton warriors handled it easily. To stay warm, Cha actively jumped right into the combat because at the very least it helped him stay warm. The captain watched this unfold in complete, utter shock. She had never seen summoned skeletons fight with such high-level skill. A player offered to back up the Russian team, but they clearly did not need help. The captain quickly realized they would only get in the way by stepping in. Knew these guys were elite players. It was exactly what you expect from someone who cleared the Needle dungeon. Now she had to report this to her guild immediately so they could recruit him to their side. Suddenly, a sharp whistle echoed, a warning that disaster had struck back at camp. Wolves breached the defense lines. They were swarming the camp. There were so many beasts that the players could barely hold out, praying for help. But the captain was still gone, and this endless horde was simply massive. There were hundreds of them, a sea of teeth, slicing back through. The captain immediately rushed to save her squad, cutting down the wolves. Left and right, she ordered everyone to quickly form a defensive wall. Calm down and act methodically. These were only level 1 monsters. She barked clear orders to her wounded to retreat while the rest formed a tight circle and systematically cleared the area, but the pack refused to give up. One alpha wolf scrambled up a high mountain and began to howl, calling the rest to join the player feast. Soon the ground shook. The scout climbed a tree to check. He quickly climbed up to check the area and froze in absolute pure horror. This was no ordinary pack. This was a massive tsunami of wild beasts advancing, sweeping away everything. The captain knew they were in deep trouble now. Their defenses had collapsed, and the main army had not even arrived. High up on a nearby cliff, the Russian hunters watched calmly. Eugen knew they would all perish without help, but Cha was not about to get dragged into this chaotic wolf mess. Luckily, Eugen had requested a specific new skill from his broker just the day before. To clear the Horned Fox dungeon, the broker got it, and it was the legendary Aura Field skill. After Eugen activated it, he told them they would finally join the fight. Down below, things were desperate. The hunters were backed into a dead end, completely surrounded by hundreds of hungry, snapping beasts. Then a massive blast shook the field. Right in the center, the captain realized she had been too reckless. It was no fluke that 12 teams had already failed here. There was no hope for backup. No one else was coming, except for these two. Could they actually turn the tide? One of them stood above them. Could they actually turn this around? One of them hurled a dead wolf carcass off the cliff. The other triggered corpse explosion. The brutal blast tore dozens of monsters to shreds. The pair then leaped down to clean up, with Cha proving his insane skills here. His skeletons rise, tearing through the wolves with ease. Eugen activates his sun blessing and calmly watches from the sidelines. Right after, he links his mind with a skeleton warrior. Suddenly, his mana drains rapidly, but he becomes a complete monster. His eyes burn with hellfire. He is fully loaded. Fangs burst right from his jaw, hungry to shred those beasts. Even the experienced Chin freezes, staring at the strange new glow shining from the skeletons, a wild aura that makes them completely invulnerable. They leave absolutely zero work for Chin, looking like they are completely feral. Like they are on overdrive. Chin realizes the cunning. And brilliant Eugen just used some next-level skills when hunting. When fighting giant waves of monsters, instead of keeping the blessing to himself, it is much smarter to activate the aura field, allowing his summons to share the massive stat boost as well. That is exactly what Eugen planned, and his bet pays off in a big way. His supercharged skeleton army clears the pack completely alone. Cleared the entire zone without any outside help. Then, Eugen tosses another fresh wolf carcass straight into the absolute center of the ongoing battlefield. A massive blast rings out from the corpse. The captain is completely stunned by this genius play. A massive wall of dead bodies now blocks the entire incoming horde. Pure genius. With the wave stalled, she yells for the players to strike. Meanwhile, the broker keeps mapping out his next moves. He knows the Messiah Guild will have to reward their saviors. They will not just want to recruit Isaac Ivanov, they will have to announce it to the entire public. Secretary Lee knows their guild is packed with elite players. But is Kim Woo-jin really so strong that he easily outclasses everyone? The broker has absolutely zero doubts about that, having analyzed the terrifying speed of his growth. His development speed is terrifying. Now they must ensure that the secret identities of player A and Kim Woo-jin